Hello everyone and welcome to this evening's meeting, everyone in the gallery and those online, to the 7th of August 2023 Council meeting. I open the meeting at 7 p.m. and I will now pass you on to the Chief Executive Officer, Ms Alison Beckwith, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi everyone. This is an ordinary meeting of Council. My name's Alison Beckwith and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Banyule. Tonight's meeting is being held in person in accordance with the provisions of Council's governance rules and the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting is being live streamed via Council's website page and our Facebook page. The live stream is not interactive. Any comments or private messages directed to us while the live stream is live tonight will not be presented to the councillor group or have any bearing on tonight's meeting. Council's request to speak methods continue to allow participation of our residents without having to attend the meeting in person. Just some rules for public participation during our meeting. Please note that any public questions submitted to tonight's council meeting will be read out by a member of our executive leadership team and a verbal response will be provided. The question and the response will also be recorded in the meeting minutes following tonight's meeting. Council does not accept questions as part of the request to speak process and no statement may be derogatory, defamatory or directed to an individual councillor, member of staff, ratepayer or member of the public. A 2-minute time limit does apply to all requests to speak. The timer will be used and a warning sound will sound at the 1.5 minute mark, and officers, if they are indeed reading out on behalf of a resident, will sum up for the last 30 seconds and the Mayor will ask those speaking in person tonight to sum up as well. We also ask that members of the gallery please check their phones and ensure that it's either switched off or on silent mode to avoid any disruptions tonight. I also ask in advance for any members of the public gallery that may depart the chamber while the meeting is in progress that you do not hold conversations with others until you're outside the building. Noise from the foyer area just out here, both outside the chamber and downstairs, reverberate up to the room and actually affect our live stream. So I thank you in advance for that. I'll now introduce you to the councillors that are in attendance tonight and I'll start on my left. I have Councillor Tom Melican and Councillor Peter Dimorales. And to my right, I have the Mayor, Councillor Peter Castaldo, Councillor Fiona Mitsonikos, Councillor Rick Garotti and Councillor Elizabeth Neely. This evening we're also joined by the executive team here. Mark Gilio, Director of Corporate Services, Kath Brackett, Director of Community Wellbeing, Natasha Swan, Director of City Development, and Darren Bennett, Director of Assets and City Services. Also tonight we have a support team, including our governance officers, our IT team, and of course our JETS crew who are coordinating the live stream. We thank you for your participation and we hope you enjoy the meeting.
Thank you. And to begin with, our meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples, and on behalf of Banyule City Council, I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians, and I'd like to pay respects to all Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders, past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island elders joining us this evening. And Council is committed to the values of diversity within our community. I will now read out Banyule's diversity statement demonstrating our commitment. Our community is made up of diverse cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, sexualities, ages and genders. We are committed to access, equity, participation and rights for everyone. Principles which empower, foster harmony and increase the well-being of an inclusive community. I'll now move on to apologies. We have 3 apologies this evening from Councillor Alida McKern, Councillor Alison Champion and Councillor Mark Di Pasquale. Are there any other apologies? No. We move on to leave of absence. Now, councillors, I note that Councillor Melican is seeking a leave of absence from Council. Council, it is important for you to note that Council must accept any reasonable request of leave under the Local Government Act 2020. Councillor Melican, I know you will need to declare a material conflict of interest regarding the leave of absence and to leave the chamber before the vote. Yes, please. I'm now seeking a motion from the Council to grant Councillor Tom Melican a leave of absence. Can I please have a councillor to move and second? Councillor Mitsonikos moved and seconded Councillor Neely. I now put the motion to grant Councillor Melican leave of absence for the period of Monday the 14th of August to Friday the 29th of September, inclusive of all those in Now, all those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Could we let Councillor Melican back in, please? We now move on to the confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 17th of July 2023. Can I please have a councillor to move and second? Councillor Neely moved, seconded by Councillor Demirellos. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to disclosures of interest, as required by any other meeting of Council, councillors must declare a conflict of interest at the start of a meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to Council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item has been resolved. At any point throughout the meeting, if any other councillor recognises that they have a general or material interest, they can flag that at that point and follow the same procedure. Are there any disclosures of interest? We have already heard from Councillor Melican previously. Do we have any other? Councillor Garotti, would you like to speak to the conflict that you have?
Do I do that now or at the time of the item? Yeah, I've got an interest in item 6.2.
Okay, and the nature of your interest as well at this point in time?
I own property in that area.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other councillors that have a conflict of interest? No. Okay. We'll now move on to officers that are present. I now ask whether you have a conflict of interest in any items presented before Council this evening. No conflicts of interest. We now move on to the presentation this evening. On the 25th of May this year, I had the pleasure of attending and speaking at the 2023 Banyule Youth Summit report card, where the young people presented recommendations for themselves and their peers about topics that mattered to them. Tonight we're going to hear from local students. Omayama Ali and Ali Sanasam, who attended this year's summit. They will tell us a bit about their experience at the event, and we will show a short video to recap that event. Welcome and thank you for joining. I think we have 3 speakers actually this evening, so we're now we're welcoming you for joining this event.
Thank you, Mayor Costado and councillors. My name is Omayama Ali and I'm here tonight with Al Sandstorm and Thomas Cruikshanks. On the 25th of May 2023, the 5th Banyule Youth Summit was held at Heidelberg Golf Club. Over 100 young people from secondary schools in and around Banyule participated to discuss issues identified by themselves and their peers during a pre-summit workshop facilitated by Council's Youth Services team.
A diverse representation of young people attended, including those with disabilities, young LGBTQIA community people, and people from various cultural backgrounds, including Somali Australians and First Nations young people. Young people discussed and debated topics important to them, which they believed could improve their community and the lives of themselves and their peers.
The Minister of Youth, Honourable Natalie Solomon MP, addressed the summit with words of encouragement for the young people. A question and answer panel featured speakers advocating for young people, discussing issues that matter to young people. Ahmed Maridi, a community member, Zali Misfit, and the Banyule First Nations lead, and Vicky Ward, MP, were all guests.
Young people worked collectively to devise a desired outcome for each issue. Following on from this, several possible strategies were proposed to address each issue. These outcomes and strategies will be delivered by Banyule Youth Services team in partnership with other community organisations and young people.
The topics that young people were nominated to discuss on the day included body image, youth voice, the LGBTQIA community, gender equity, masculinity, neurodiversity, disability inclusion, alcohol and other drugs, equal opportunities, mental health, climate change, and cultural inclusion.
We would like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about our personal experience on the day.
At the Youth Summit, I was actively engaged in discussions about equal opportunities. This topic holds immense significance to me as I strongly believe in creating a fair and inclusive society where everyone has an equal equal chance to succeed regardless of their background. What I enjoyed most about the summit was the chance to connect with passionate individuals from diverse backgrounds, sharing our experiences and ideas to foster a more equitable world. It is vital for the Council to support such events as they promote social progress and empower young people to drive positive change in their communities. As a result of the summit, I hope to witness greater awareness, advocacy, and concrete steps taken towards dismantling barriers and ensuring equal opportunities for everyone, irrespective of their identity and circumstances.
My experience with the Banyule Youth Summit was extremely positive. I sat on the neurodiversity table, and it was great to meet others with similar experiences with their conditions in terms of community and school life.
The summit provided me with an opportunity to take a leadership position on the challenges boys face with masculinity, a topic that I'm very passionate about. We had been studying this topic in English in my English class at Parade College, and it was interesting to explore this with my male and female peers at other schools and understand their perspectives. During the workshop, we developed strategies to impact change positively. Thank you for your time. Now we will share a short video of the 2023 Youth Summit.
Welcome to the 2023 Banyule Youth Summit. This summit is brought to you by the Banyule Council with support from the Victorian Government through the Engage grant. Young people from across Banyule are here today to tell the Council what matters to them. In the lead up of the summit, the Council's youth team visited the schools to find out what topics matter most to them. Now that they're here, they'll get a chance to have a great discussion and propose recommendations to the Council. Let's go meet a few.
So my topic today is climate change, and it's very important to me because we only have one Earth and we can't just change planets and change homes.
So my topic is mental health, and it's important to me because I think some people can be quite closed off and don't really want to talk about anything.
Talking about today is body image, and I'm really hoping that by talking about that we can just really help everyone around our community.
We'll be discussing youth voice on this table. And it's important to me because I think that youth and students, but also youth generally, voice and input in community and government is very important.
Today I hope to get out of a good conversation and be an advocate for young people.
Today you'll have the chance to talk to people from other schools who feel just as passionate about the chosen topics
that you've chosen.
There is a lot of negativity surrounding the issue of climate change, and it's tending to overwhelm us with huge statistics, and so climate anxiety is definitely an issue which we think is a big one we need to address.
And we got talking about the impacts that COVID had on our young people's mental health. We've noticed that our ability to comment on socially has been negatively affected.
So one of the key things we focused on were safe spaces within the community, and looking at ways to address not only people feeling unsafe, but also people feeling like they're not actively being supported.
If there's like a group of activities, you would usually want to include everyone in, because not everyone's lucky enough to be a part of something.
Our vision was more support for people with a disability.
We want a Banyule community where there are no stereotypes and divides between genders at all, and where all young people are educated on gender equality. We want to eliminate the toxic triangle of gender inequality, gender discrimination, and gender stereotypes that affect young people so much.
We thought that masculinity could be both healthy in a positive or toxic in a negative way, and stereotypes play a huge role in determining whether they are positive or negative. Young men can sometimes feel isolated or worthless if they aren't meeting the expectations of a man.
What would we like to happen is elimination of racism, awareness of my community, additional prayer rooms in schools, teachers treating students the same, more opportunities for young Australian Somali women, and more representation in men-dominated fields.
Our vision is to create the same opportunities for young Somalis. This can be done through targeted ongoing support programs, which will hopefully create a safe space for Somali youth within our Banyule community.
We believe that there is a lack of understanding about all the different experiences that fall under the neurodivergent umbrella, and that can lead to some really serious stigma and negative profiling.
The abuse of drugs, specifically alcohol, nicotine and weed, is a persisting cultural issue amongst young Australians, and we believe that better education is needed to improve harm minimisation, emphasising addiction as a mental health issue and encouraging safe use of such things.
We found that a lack of awareness, education and sensitivity is these things that really impacted how we lived our lives when we were kids.
And our vision is for culturally and linguistically diverse young people to feel included in their community.
Our vision is for young people to feel comfortable, loved and safe. We want young people to not be defined by their appearance. We want to positively change how other young people, families, teachers and ourselves feel about our body image.
Listening to young people allows us to feel that we're being supported and acknowledged. Young people know and understand what they need, hence we need to have a seat at the table.
Banyule Youth Summit 2023!
I'd just like to thank all those that came and speak to us tonight on the presentation. We'll address that on the council agenda in a minute. We'll just speak to that and we'll have the opportunity to ask you some questions, so you might get ready for councillor questions. But thank you very much for coming in to speak to us this evening. And we'll jump back onto that in a minute. We'll now move on to urgent business, and I note there is no urgent business items tonight. And next, moving on to petitions. I note that there are no petitions this evening. And now I will call, councillors, I wish to call for a procedural motion to reorder the business in the agenda to allow for item 4.1, the Banyule Youth Summit report, to be brought forward to the start of the meeting. To follow on from the presentation heard this evening, and also item 6.2, 2 to 8 Glenmore Street, 4450 Highview Crescent and 35 Thornton Street, McLeod, proposed aged care development, P58 2021, to both be brought forward. We have a procedural motion that councillors request that the business of the agenda be reordered to allow items 4.1 and 6.2 to be discussed first, with the remaining of the business of the agenda to follow. I seek a mover and a seconder. Councillor Neely, and seconded by Councillor Mitsonikos. I now put the motion. All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 4.1. Let me just find that. Now, there are no speakers to this item. We've already had the speakers at the presentation. Councillors, do we have any questions for the speakers? Councillor Melican.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming this evening. We've had youth summits before, and I've always been very impressed with the level and the interest and the passion that people have for moving into a role where they can influence outcomes. I was just wondering how you see yourself moving forward in the future and how you will continue to be involved in the public discussion and trying to make the world a better place.
Would each one of you like to have an opportunity to speak to that? Or you just come up together if you feel comfortable.
I think to answer your question, I think as we progress through, high school and university, the opportunities that we are given to express our voice on different topics would be where we would sort of address the issues that we want to make. And then, I think the more opportunities that we're given, the more chances we are to express what we want to make change and address different actions we want to take and to present them to you and get your opinion on them.
I think that the Banyule Youth Summit was a great opportunity to have our voices heard. So I would hope that in the future there's more opportunities just like that so young people can express their feelings on certain topics.
Thank you. I notice there are no other speakers to this item. Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Neely, moved. Seconded, Councillor Melican. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the three presenting today. And also to take a question without notice. And you answered it better than what adults would answer without being prepared, so well done. Very impressive summit, very impressive young people here today. And even though every time this is the second summit I've been able to attend, it seems that our youth are more empowered than ever. We have some of the same kids coming every time and they're building on their skills, presenting to a group of 100 plus people. And we're also got a lot of new young people coming and putting their hand up for something that they normally wouldn't. It's a real wonderful opportunity. It gives kids confidence, but it's also a very important process for us at Council because it informs our strategy, our Banyule Youth Action Plan. So all of the discussions, as motivating and inspiring as they were, we do the work on the ground at Council to ensure that we're providing safe spaces for our young people. Just from the actions in the report, my favourite recommendations from the young people was a parent workshop on body image, workshops for teachers, community groups and sporting clubs on LGBTQIA+ communities. The social activities targeted for the age group of 12 to 14, very difficult age to engage kids. The social media campaign that shares young people's cultural stories. What a simple yet special way to share your experiences. Also, the career advice for Somali Australian young people, really being specific with the needs of different groups. So just really professionally done and well done to all young people informing our strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the second like to speak?
Just say a few words. Yeah, thanks very much for attending tonight, and also the summit. I had the opportunity to be there as well, and it was a very impressive summit. You'd have to say the issues that young people want to talk about and they're concerned about are totally different to the issues that I faced at a similar age. In fact, I think life was a lot easier back then, and it's very good that young people are keen to make sure that things are set right. And yeah, but what always amazes me are, the issues are different, the people are different, but what they all want is exactly the same, what we all want, and that's to feel that we belong somewhere, that we fit into the system, and not everyone does that. And it was highlighted, I think, at the Youth Summit that some people just feel outside that system, and we need to make sure as a community we embrace everybody, and that's super important. So, and I think about the intergenerational gap that's there, and it embarrasses me of someone at my age to feel that the advantages we got, the opportunities we got, and because of things we've done, those opportunities don't really exist at the same degree. There are certainly massive opportunities there for young people that are wanted to embrace those opportunities and work hard. But there's also, I'm afraid, a lot of people that will be left behind. And that's very upsetting to think that to support the lifestyle of certain people in our community, other people don't get those type of opportunities. So, and the other thing I would encourage you to do is, there was a lot of passion, there was a lot of fire at that session. I'd like you to make sure that continues, that you don't become overwhelmed by what's happening, and make sure you stay focused and look for where you want to get to, and stay involved and stay in the conversation and do what you can to make things better. So thanks for coming in tonight.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just really wanted to acknowledge the time, the skills and the knowledge that the young people invested in that process. It was a big commitment that they made, not only of their time, but of their learnings and understanding to inform a plan. And I just want to give that assurance to those that are here tonight, but to all those who attend the forum, that we hear that plan. So it's being tabled with council formally tonight. It will go through our budget, and we'll make sure that those priorities that are in there are funded and delivered, because you collectively have invested time to put a plan together, and it's incumbent upon us as local government to hear that and respect that, and to put our resources into it. So I just want to give you that commitment to our young people, that we honour what you did, we respect it, and we'll ensure it's funded and delivered through the budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor De Morelos.
Thank you, Matt. Just briefly, for me, I didn't get the opportunity to attend this one due to other priorities, but I was really interested in seeing the difference compared to last year's on what the topics were coming out. And it's clear that there's been a significant shift in the community during the last 3 or 4 years, especially COVID. And it's great to see that so many people still came out and had a voice. And for the three speakers, you've done such a great job on public speaking. You're already one step ahead of most people, because I'm pretty sure it's one of the biggest fears for a lot of people is public speaking. So good work, and look forward to supporting this.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Mitsonikos.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, yeah, I just wanted to also say thank you to all our guest speakers for coming tonight. You guys did great, and girls, sorry. And it's such a great event. I didn't make it to this one, but I did to the previous one. And it's just such a great event to provide our youth with an opportunity to discuss their concerns, because they are very different to what adults think. We need to hear from our youth. But personally, I love the energy and the passion that the youth have for these topics and what they bring to to these events. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who attended and contributed to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else, or is that everyone? All right, then look, I'd just like to congratulate the three of you for coming in this evening. You are leaders amongst youth in Banyule. Congratulations. I was too scared to come in and speak before council before I got onto council. So well done for you all to do that. I'd also like to acknowledge the positive spirit in which the youth engaged at the youth forum. The energy built throughout the day, and it was tremendous to come back once you'd all worked together. The collective group spirit in that room was really wonderful to see, and all of the recommendations that came forward. The subject matter was quite wide in nature. I'm just going to repeat each of the categories because I think that it's really important for all of us to think about outside of this response as well. And they covered mental health, climate change, gender equality, masculinity, alcohol and other drugs, neurodiversity, body image, LGBTQIA+, cultural inclusion, disability inclusion, and issues specific to the Somali Australian youth people. Now, there was one that stood out to me that I think was the first time it came, and that was masculinity. Now, that was a really topical subject. I think that has really been a subject of conversation online, and I thought I should draw attention to that. And the two elements underneath that was to deliver workshops in schools, sporting clubs, and promote positive masculinity. And secondly, to deliver social activities for younger men, 12 to 14 years, combining physical activity and conversations. Now, I don't know why that jumped out at me, but maybe I think that that would have been beneficial to me when I was at school. So well done on that, and well done to both of you as well for being leaders in your subjects. I will now put the motion before us. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 6.2. Let me just find that. Challenging scrolling through this. Here we go. Now, Councillor Gorotti, I note that you have declared a conflict of interest for this item. I request that you leave the chamber whilst the item is being discussed and resolved on. Thank you. I'd just like to also thank the staff for the tremendous work and school teachers that were here to help out. Thank you. We now move on to 6.2. Now, I would like to say that we have 12 speakers to this item, generally have 343 against, but on this occasion, under the strong advice from the ward councillor, Tom Melican, suggested it's absolutely essential for transparency that we enable everyone the opportunity to speak to this subject matter. And so under the discretion of the Mayor, I'm comfortable to have all 12 speakers speak this evening. Now, the first speaker we have on this subject is Suzanne Berry from McLeod, and they will address the council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Suzanne, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'm against the Mayflower proposal. Points from my perspective and others, objectors are, the majority objections, 207, are from a close McLeod community in a very quiet area, which has a village character. This is hard to find in modern Melbourne. The area has many immigrants who are very proud of their houses and their neighbourhood. The proposed aged care site, buildings, the scale, form and materiality does not align with the neighbourhood character and landscape. For example, the building IRCF1 is 129 metres long and reminds us of an institution. The buildings will impose upon the neighbourhood as cold, impersonal, monolithic structures on top of a hill. It was disappointing to learn public land was offered to the developer to enable a larger build and then claim a smaller ratio of build. I don't understand how the roads can be underutilised, so it is now proposed to have much more traffic via normal cars plus the daily service and delivery vehicles concentrated into local residential areas. In particular, Highview Crescent, where I live. We are decarbonising our environment, and less cars are better, not more. It is also a safety concern for children and the elderly. The community consultation of the 2nd of May was really a joint presentation of the developer and the Banyule City Council town planner. Many people commented that they could not distinguish between the two presenters. It appears as if the council and the developer are in alignment. This proposed development does not appear to meet the council's own housing and neighbourhood character review. We are not against aged care as such. What we are against is this massive overdevelopment. I fervently hope the councillors will reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a quick question for the relevant officer. There was it was suggested that council offered to sell land to the developer. Could the Director for City Development please respond to that?
Thank you, Mayor. There is no formal request at this stage, but the application includes land that could potentially be sold to the developer at both ends of the development. There would still be a public process required in order to proceed with any sale of the land. And there's a condition in the recommendation to that effect that this permit would have no force or effect unless that sale were actually followed through. I guess one would say that the risk is in the applicant's hands. If they wish to act on this permit, they also need to secure the sale of the land.
So I'd just like to confirm, was this offered to the developer? Did council offer it to the developer?
I'm not aware whether the land was offered to the developer or whether the request was made to purchase. I would need to take that on notice.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to the second speaker. Stephen Placko from McLeod will address council and is speaking against the recommendation. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, the original vote was deferred, and I was under the impression that this was to allow discussion in good faith for a more acceptable development outcome to all parties. Alas, as it turns out, a developer, for whatever reason, is not willing to change the proposal. I would just like to reiterate that we are not against aged care facilities. The existing aged care unit buildings design and character blends very well with the neighbourhood character. There is a seamless transition from the existing retirement units to residential houses, and in fact most visitors entering the area aren't even aware of the retirement units until it's pointed out to them. However, this proposal has no such transition. It is massive in build, in size, in scale, in form. It is of industrial type scale, sitting on top of a hill, imposing upon and overwhelming the entire neighbourhood. It is totally out of character with the village character of the neighbourhood, and it brings disharmony into the community. It simply does not fit with the neighbourhood character. It's as if the entire complex was sort of dropped from outer space onto the community. Further, there doesn't appear to be any holistic, integrated approach to aged care facilities. It appears as if it's a disjointed, piecemeal approach, separate planning for leading approval and separate operational issues. In your deliberation, I'd also request you to consider that this is a major overdevelopment impacting a whole wide community. And yet, there has been no community consultation, community engagement at all. Nothing in 2022. There was a presentation on 2nd of May.
Could we please sum up now? We've had 2 minutes. Could you sum up, please?
Okay, in summary, I think this is another development that simply doesn't fit with the neighbourhood character and should be rejected. Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Tegan Whittaker from McLeod will address council in person, speaking against the recommendation. Tegan, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
I am speaking tonight against the proposed development. My name is Tegan Whittaker. I live on Highview Crescent. I work for an architectural practice with years of health planning experience and recently finished an award-winning aged care facility. We talk about being innovative and progressive, changing outdated opinions and policies. The proposed design shows none of this and completely disregards all updated standards and recommendations by the Department of Health. Many new research and studies show that these large institutional type buildings isolate, restrict and are unsafe for not only residents but staff as well. Recent events with COVID-19 and the disease outbreaks show just how concerning and unsafe these large, congested and highly populated types of buildings are from an infectious control point of view. From these devastating events, the Department of Health updated the recommendations in December 2022 with a document designing new residential facilities. This notes to use clustering of buildings to reduce building scale and avoid institutional style buildings. Smaller buildings with fewer residents not only reduces the risk of disease outbreaks, but also enables social interaction, which is highly important in aged care. To mitigate the outbreaks with the proposed design would require a higher cleaning routine to suppress outbreaks, but then this would drive an atmosphere that is more hospital and clinical rather than creating a homely environment. We understand that there are different levels of care required, but the goal is to reduce the amount of high-level care and extend independent living. Can I ask Council who is vetting this design to meet the government recommendations and basic building code standards? There are also major fire concerns with this building design. We are still waiting to review specifications of materials to deem if these will not be a fire hazard to surrounding house and bushlands. I urge all council members to reject this proposal and save the future of the elderly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Macon from McLeod will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Mary, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
I oppose this proposed overdevelopment. It ignores the neighbourhood character, threatens community safety and disrupts McLeod's charm. I've lived in McLeod for over 40 years and lived next door to this proposal. My position and that of the community of McLeod has not changed since the last council meeting. In the last 3 weeks, the developer has made one insincere effort to meet with residents so that we can openly discuss our concerns. Unfortunately, at every discussion with our councillor to discuss our concern and list of objections has been met consistently with arguments in defence of the developer's proposal. Our main concern remains the same, which is the massive scale and starkly commercial design of the proposed development. This proposal disregards our area's essence, will lead to increased traffic risks and parking problems. The destruction of green spaces and mature trees contradicts Banyule Council's greening commitments. Earlier, we heard from our Banyule youth and the focus and importance they place on climate change. Council need to listen to all parts of the community and how this proposal will impact them. Similar proposals in residential areas located on major roads like Lower Heidelberg Road were rejected for the reasons that we have already referred to Council. This proposal will harm our neighbourhood character, will negatively impact our safety, amenity, the livability of our suburb and ultimately the health and well-being of our community. We support thoughtful aged care, but this $65 million profit-driven proposal clashes with McLeod's peaceful living and our unique McLeod identity. Why does Mayflower want to supersize the existing aged care facility? The plan doesn't fit in with the area and belongs in denser settings. So many of the community cannot be wrong. Please listen to your community. We ask you to say no to this proposal. Council, please act responsibly and reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Neza Kormanik from McLeod. Will address the council in person as speaking against the recommendation. Neza, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Evening all. I am a resident in Highview Crescent, just a few doors from this proposed build. So I implore you to reject the current planning application as it stands. The council, being the representative of its residents, have a duty of care to ensure that new builds conform to council's commitment to achieving I can pronounce it, by 2028. The proposed plans with its overdevelopment of the current site will greatly impact the environment surrounding it in a negative way. I believe better design of the buildings are needed that take into consideration the neighbourhood character, the natural bushland surrounding it. The council need to encourage the planners to make the buildings greener using green walls, roof gardens and water features. Mass development is causing the urban island effect. That is, these structures re-emit heat into the atmosphere as the materials used don't absorb the heat generated by the sun as the natural landscape would, thus contributing to global warming. Another concern I have is, will there be a covenant to protect the buildings in the future? Will they remain an aged care facility in years to come, or will Mayflower flip the properties, turning them into apartments and townhouses? I don't understand the need for 3-bedroom homes in an aged care facility. My family built our home in the 70s. Back then, the council made us set back the house and dig down so far we reached the water table. They said that the house was too visibly bulky. We had to excavate to such a degree that the windows of the garage and rumpus room were built out below ground level. Why should this build be any different? I, as a ratepayer and resident, am extremely unsettled by the fact that Banyule Council are prepared to sell off sections of our already narrow streets to accommodate this build. Why? I want to know why they would even consider such an idea. They have more than enough land to build on. Also, I don't understand why perfectly good buildings are being demolished. What a waste of resources. Approving this proposal is going against sustainability building for the future. And just very quickly, I've also noticed that you've made a budget for climate action programs of $1.76 million in the next budget. So we could start saving some of that money by building a sustainable building for the future. Thank you.
We have a question from Councillor Neely.
Yeah, just a question addressing something Neza mentioned. Will this development remain a retirement village to the Director? Through you, Mayor.
Yep.
Through you, Mayor, the planning permit that's being sought here is for use and development of an aged care facility. Should it be intended to not use it for that purpose, they would need to amend the permit to allow for that. The only covenant on that would be, say, with the detached units, if they met the requirements for a dwelling, there may be some opportunity to use them as a house in the future, but it would need to meet current standards for what a house requires in terms of car parking, open space and other matters. So at the moment, the permit would lock them into this as a development and they couldn't turn it into residential apartments and houses without some permission.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your question? Thank you. We now move on to Leanne Perillo from McLeod, who will address the council in person and is against the recommendation. Leanne, thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My husband and I and my family of 4 boys are against the Mayflower proposal. We've been in McLeod 25 years and we were lucky enough to have bought the property when the other Southern Cross was there. And it was a pleasure to go out on the weekend where with the residents, you would see them in the street. We feel that this is largely out of character with our surrounds, whereas the one before wasn't, and I understand that things need to move with time, but I think as someone had said earlier, it looks like it's been dropped out of space. I don't know that there's a need for something that on the high side would almost reach the sky. We're concerned also with pollution, the parking and the traffic, and I've heard many arguments that the roads will be viable for this sort of traffic. It couldn't possibly be. We've got 6 cars in our house and our 6 cars on the road are almost too much. So it's going to be a problem for everyone in our area. The apartments, as I said, are completely different to the dwellings in the area. And my concern also is that as a ratepayer, I don't know that I'm being heard. And I just really implore council to listen to me and listen to everyone else that's come before you tonight, because we bought that house in good faith, and as I said, the Southern Cross was there and it was fine, but you know, where will we go if I was to move into that area and see that there? I certainly wouldn't buy a house in that area, and so that's where we're all going to be once we move forward from, if it does get built. So I just implore council to reject the proposal, and from the last meeting, I just wanted to say that when Mayfair did get up here, they were telling us about their ethics and so on. I have nothing against their ethics, and I certainly don't think that they're out there to, you know, be unethical, but the whole apartment building is just, as I said, completely out of character, and it goes against what we bought when we purchased our property 25 years ago. So please vote against the proposal.
Thank you. Next up, we have Alicia Curry from Rosanna, who will address the council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I speak against the recommendation. I hope the council will support the community with over 200 objections. It's very important to understand that they are speaking about the neighbourhood character of McLeod. I mean, that is the prime voice here. And with council having their neighbourhood character strategy out on display at the moment, one of the cornerstones is to respect the existing neighbourhood character. So council needs to give a nod to that. I also want to comment that if council rejects this, the applicant can reapply any time. But if council approves this development, this is the best development they're going to see. The developer can always ask for more, but they will never get less. So if council rejects this, we can hope that the developer can come back to you with a better design, something that the community might support, and we want to see articulation in these designs. Also of note, I sent to the council over the last few days records that the developer seems to have fenced off the section of council land. So to hear that they are under question, that potentially they have already offered the land, or council has offered it to them, they certainly think they own it. And very important trees. So lastly, I was speaking to George Paris about one of the trees that has been removed, and he tells me that it's a very important remnant, locally rare, mature, fully grown swamp gum that has been removed and not replaced. And I believe that they haven't replaced it because they're foreseeing that this development is coming ahead, and they just stop caring. And this goes back to our urban forest strategy. So please, council, reject the development, let the applicant reapply. Thank you.
Next up, we have John Burrick from residents of Dunvegan Estate, who will address council in person and speaking against the recommendation. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
On May the 2nd of May, residents attended a public forum with council and developer where their concerns went largely unheard. At the July 17th meeting, the previous council meeting, council deferred the vote for this application to allow them to revisit the design following consultation with residents. Since this time, we've had one meeting with council and developer on July the 20th and one other with council on August the 3rd. Following the first meeting, a councillor declared, the developer is prepared to let you choose the building colour, but you can't have a smaller building. We have received no revised drawings through this process, no amendments, no written confirmation from council of anything that was discussed or agreed. At the July 20th meeting, council staff members expressed regret over the position described in their recommendation, and the developer's consultant noted that they attended the meeting to learn about resident objections. Our position and objections remain unchanged. The 129 metre long by 29 metre wide building is too large and out of character with the prevailing neighbourhood. The developer's aged care consultant has stated that 72 beds, that's 4 wards, 18 beds per ward, which is 3 beds, 20% in excess of Victorian Health Building Authority guidelines, must be a single building to provide efficiency, cost, profit. An aged care subject matter expert, we heard from Tegan earlier, this is another person, reviewed the drawings, wrote a report for me and noted the bulk of the design is not conducive to appropriate levels of care. Breaking up the building will reduce its impact and provide a better model of care. The transfer of public land is a permanent condition and is required by the developer to make a terribly designed building fit. Council have indicated they will review the transfer after the vote.
Could you please sum up?
Which is counterintuitive. In summary, planning provisions require the aged care facility be well designed to meet existing and future needs, and that it responds to context in terms of character, natural features, and landscape. These objectives have not been met, and the application should be rejected as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Anthony Mutton from Mayflower, who will address council in person as speaking for the recommendation. Anthony, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors and executive officers. Thank you very much for allowing me to present this evening. My name is Anthony Mutton and I'm the chair of the Mayflower board. I've been on the board for many years and passionate about the support that we give the community of Mayflower and the areas in which we operate. I'm not intending to talk about the planning application in front of you tonight, except to say that Mayflower has listened to the concerns raised by council, planning officers, as well as local community, and we have amended the plans on multiple occasions in consideration of the views expressed. These amendments have included a reduction in building heights, significant increase in setbacks, protection of trees, as well as increased landscaping of Indigenous Australian flora and fauna. Based on our plans, about 60% of the site is designated green space. We have also amended the building materials and colours as per council officer recommendations. In short, we have listened to the feedback and adapted our design accordingly. I want to repeat that Mayflower is a proud, community-based not-for-profit organisation with over 60 years' experience in the care of elderly Australians and the community and their communities. I invite anyone to go to any of our properties and have a look around, talk to our staff, talk to our residents. We provide a means for residents to remain in their local communities and create a supportive and care-filled environment for them to thrive during the stages of their lives. We treat our residents with dignity and respect. And in McLeod, we intend to support 155 residents and provide local jobs for 80 staff, all in an area with a rapid ageing population and a shortage of local housing to support integrated care for the elderly. Every dollar we make is reinvested in our homes. We are not developers, we are aged care providers. We are coming into McLeod as serious contributors to the community. We are here for the long haul. We look forward to progressing to the next stage in the terms of our approval for planning application so that we can continue to invest in the long-term future of the elderly of McLeod and surrounding areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question for you. Could you please wait a minute? Come back to the lectern, Anthony. Thank you. Councillor Melican.
There's been a suggestion that this is the first phase of a staged approach. Can you comment about whether this is your final vision for the site, or will there be further development in the future?
Within the Mayflower Group or within the McLeod site?
The McLeod property.
What's being presented for is our design for the future.
That's your final. There's no plans to do anything different or?
No, there's not.
Create further buildings?
No, there's not.
Is it your intention to build, own and operate this for a long period?
That's what we do.
For a long period of time?
That is what we do. Yes, it is.
And there's also been suggestions that this building doesn't meet the current or evolving aged care facilities requirements because of the Aged Care Royal Commission that's evolving. Can you comment about its suitability as a high-level aged care facility?
All I can say to that is that we've engaged professionals to give us the best advice, and that's what we've done. And we've consulted with council to meet the needs of town planning requirements.
So you would say it was a modern, purposely built aged care facility?
It is a purpose-built aged care, residential aged care facility.
Of the highest standard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Look, I also have one further question, if no one else does. Around a little while back, you put forward a large proposal as well, but that was withdrawn. Could you speak to what happened and why that was withdrawn with this new one?
Can I get our consultant to address on that one?
Yes, please.
I'm from an organisation, a business called One Foul Swoop. So we're a seniors living consultant working with Mayflower at the moment on gaining a town planning approval. So we've been engaged in the last couple of months. So my answer is coming at the back end of this. But my understanding is from our town planner that there was a much larger development that was put forward, but I think the advice from the council staff was to reduce the scope, reduce the height of the development and bring it to what you've seen today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, we have Greg Cottrell from McLeod, and he will address the council in person as speaking against the recommendation. Greg, please approach the lectern.
I object to the current Mayflower proposal. I do not oppose development of the site, but I do object to this proposal. The proposal does not comply with the state planning provisions. It is an inappropriate design based on scale, mass, form, materials, appropriateness of architecture, prevailing urban form, amenity, and prevailing urban character. The proposal degrades the amenity of McLeod. I object to the transfer of public land to facilitate the proposal. Public land should not be sold to provide an advantage to a commercial enterprise. The proposal is a low-cost design that does not address identified flaws in the recent Royal Commission into aged care. The proposal attempts to maximise commercial return and minimise real care for the vulnerable elderly occupants. I'm concerned with the passive approach of the council when dealing with local community representatives regarding the proposal. This approach shows contempt to the community representatives and exhibits support for the developer. I'm concerned with the attitude of the developer. At the previous meeting on the 17th of July, he stated he would engage with local community representatives and discuss their concerns. He did not follow the spirit of that agreement. The proposal degrades the amenity of McLeod. I ask the council to reject it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Matthew Packwood from McLeod, who will address council in person, speaking against the recommendation. David, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hello. I'm not against the proposal. I'm not against them developing and upgrading the present facility. I just want to say that at the beginning. My name's Matthew Packwood. Me and my wife, Kylie, and my 2 kids, Max and Leo, live in Highview Crescent. We moved there because we wanted to live in the suburbs. We lived in the inner city where it was busy and we wanted some peace and quiet. So we moved to McLeod, which has peace and quiet. And it has nice trees. And we are deeply, deeply upset about this development. We've been upset for 6 months. The community is upset. My neighbours are upset. And there's a lot of bitterness going around. I just wanted to say that, every night when I drive home from work, I get a bit upset. And I've started taking a longer trip so I don't have to go past the planned development. It's inappropriate for the whole area. And I sort of feel like I've got 3 options. One is to just accept it and be unhappy in my own home. Or the other one is to move, which I think is greatly unfair and upsetting. And the third one is to fight. And that's going to cause more bitterness in my community, the street, the people that I know. So I just want you to imagine that this is in your street. They built some ugly monstrosity in your home, which you've spent your whole life saving for, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just been thrust on you. And yeah, you have the opportunity to stop all this bitterness and unhappiness, go back to the drawing board and do something that fits the community, guys. This is just, it's upsetting, I'm almost in tears. And the truth is that I'm a happy guy. And this is just outrageous. So if you can, vote against it. Let's do something good that doesn't upset everyone in my street and the surrounding streets. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more speaker, David McManus from McLeod. Could you please approach the lectern? You're speaking against the recommendation. You have 2 minutes to speak. Is David here? No, doesn't look like it. All right. Well, thank you to all the speakers. This is obviously a very important subject matter to the community, and that's why we wanted to hear from all of you tonight speaking. Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers, but we've got a couple of questions. Councillor Malikan.
Of the Director, the sale of land and the planning application, can you find out the difference and why we need to respond to the planning application and the process, that if there is any request to buy any land, please?
Thank you, Councillor Milliken, through you, Mayor. I think what it is that you're asking, Tom, is do we have to consider the planning application that's before us, even though it includes land that hasn't yet been sold? The answer to that is that it is lawful to lodge a planning application on land. What it's not lawful to do is to act on it if you don't own the land. So there is a condition on this permit that references that says that should the sale of land not proceed, this permit has no force or effect. So should council make a decision tonight, you make your decision. If the sale of land is not supported, then any decision that is made tonight becomes a moot point, and that's what that condition points out. So there are separate public processes for the sale of land that council can consider, should they be of a mind to do so. There is an alternative for the applicant, which is ultimately, if they're not successful, to seek a design that doesn't include that land, which is another option that's available to them.
And I was out on site today, and currently those pieces of land are sealed bitumen, and I noticed the discussion about climate change and whether to have them to remain as sealed bitumen or become part of the landscaping. Can you comment about, but it was, when I was there today with residents, it was quite concerning when buses went around the corner, and I know they talked about rubbish trucks at the same time. If those extra pieces of bitumen are removed, it would make those corners much tighter, and the ability for people to get out of the road would be reduced greatly. If there was to be any sale of land, would council take those issues into consideration?
Certainly, through you, Mayor, any sale of land that results in a road discontinuance, part of our considerations would be whether the remaining road that is kept meets engineering standards and is safe and trafficable. So that would certainly be a key consideration before we would ever consider discontinuing any section of road.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one quickly, Mayor, to the Director through you. If this is rejected today, what is the next step for whether it's the planner, the developer or the community? Because there was a lot of mention about it coming back to council, but under my understanding it would go to VCAT. And would this actually be something that VCAT, or fits within what the VCAT state requirements are?
Through you, Mayor, I couldn't speak on behalf of VCAT, but should the application not be supported, the applicant would have a right of appeal. Should the application be supported, any person who objected to the application would have a right of appeal. The VCAT considers things afresh, so they would form their own independent view as to whether they felt the development was appropriate and would make their own consideration. They would take into account our assessment that we've tabled before you tonight and any other submissions made by any party during that hearing process. They are bound to consider the application as we are as council under our current Banyule planning scheme.
Any other questions? I have one question or two. Just quickly on neighbourhood character. What neighbourhood character planning controls do we have in that immediate area that might be relevant for discussion for us to consider?
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to response to neighbourhood character, residential aged care developments sit in a slightly different category. So there are specific state planning controls in our planning schemes that offer effectively an exemption to considerations of neighbourhood character. They have their own separate criteria. They identify that buildings can be larger in scale and less residential in nature as a construct of them being a residential aged care facility. So should this development have been, for example, a residential apartment building and residential units, there would be different neighbourhood character considerations. And this is part of the state section of the planning scheme, so not something that council has any influence over changing through our local provisions.
Thank you. And one final question. What is the appropriate authority that's to make sure that this meets the appropriate health guidelines? Is that part of our planning requirements to assess that?
It's not part of the planning application process, so we're limited to the appearance and layout on the land in a broader sense. It requires approval from the state departments responsible for aged care provision, and they would have to certify that the building meets their requirements. There would also be separate requirements to be met through the building permit process in relation to the building's safety and function that would need to be met in detail through that process that aren't part of this first stage.
Okay, thank you. Now, I believe there's an amended recommendation.
There is an amended recommendation which will take quite a long time to read out. And the first part will become recommendation A. And I'll just read out the changes, which will be highlighted in purple. So if you want to scroll down a bit so we can see that first list of modifications. I'll read them out. There is a new 1A, or a change to 1A, that the IRCF2 root plant be relocated to the centre of the building and appropriately screened and treated in noise reduction emissions in accordance with the condition 34 in this permit. Now, condition 34 is further down, and I'll read that out when I get to it, but condition 34 is all about the acoustic treatments for several of the elements within the building. Similarly, there's a change to point B that the IRCF1 roof plant screening details, including material and fabrics, in accordance with condition 34 on this permit. Also, a new point 3, modification to the elevation of material and finishes, including the black charcoal grey concrete cladding proposed for IRCF2 and the type 3 buildings replaced with a lighter tone, and building facade designed to include natural timber elements. C2, correction of the material schedule to show a proposed cladding of EC 1.0. The IRCF1 should be appropriately grey tones such as Collarbond Wallaby. This EC 5.0 replacement of the solid brick that references the brickwork in the aged care facility permanently located on this site, which may include recycling of the repurpose of the existing brickworks from the site. Place the Collarbond cladding the IRCF1 at ends of the building on both sides with brick EC 50.0 to break up the use of Collarbond at the end of the building on the southeast and northeast elevation, commencing from the lounge dining room. Continuation of the brick treatment required in condition 1C4 so that it wraps around both ends of the building to the existing vertical brick features. Consideration should be given to use bricks placed in a checkered formation to provide visual interest. This may include removal and modifications to the brick feature and a modification to the balustrade and the screening material as appropriate. And number 6, the powder coat steel battens noted in this SC1 of the type 3 accommodation building replaced with natural timber, hardwood timber, or an engineered timber alternatives to satisfy the responsible authority. So I know it's a lot of technical work, but that's basically about giving it the same appearance as the pre-existing aged facility that was there until recently, and actually using the bricks that are on site to achieve that outcome. We'll then move on to the next part, which is number 5. We can move that. A acoustic report in accordance with condition 34 that be done across the whole facility. Deletion of the northeast and southeast west terraces and paths associated with the IRCF1 building to provide a screen vegetation requirement by condition 4J. Modification to the driveway grades associated with the garages of the type 3 accommodation building to minimise the number of 1.8 grades in favour of grades that are much less than 1.8. The IRCF1 and the IRCF2 basement and port cosher ramp gradings as specified in the traffic impact assessment prepared by 1 Mile Grid dated 29th of 2022. So that condition is about the concern that people had that the garbage trucks would not be able to enter these buildings. And if you look at that report, you'll see that they have improved the sweep and the driveway to enable that to happen. And this is just putting a condition there to make sure that that is incorporated in the plans. The other conditions are talking about there was terraces on both sides of the back building. They have been removed to enable more planting on those areas. Provision for screening and plantings along the southwest and east-west boundary with species of appropriate height when mature to soften the views, the IRCF1 and IRCF building from properties on the southwest and northeast boundary. provision for screening plantings of the appropriate height when mature to the southwest and northeast of ICRF2 to soften views from the building from Broadford Crescent and Highview Crescent and distant elevated views. Provision for screen planting along the northwest boundary for appropriate heights when mature to soften the view of the building from the northwest. This is all about getting the building screened appropriately and increasing the planting greatly. In the waste management plan, there's two other additional items. At item D, that collection will only occur of waste will only occur between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and the collection of waste vehicle must park in the basement when collection is from the IRCF1 and IRCF2 building. In the sustainable management plan, there is a new item U, prior to occupancy, provision for a compliance verification summary or disclosure statement that the waste contracted demolition, that a minimum 80% of the demolition and construction waste was diverted from landfill via reuse and recycling. And we finally get to item 34, which is the acoustic report. Before the development planned by this permit commences, an acoustic report prepared by a suitably qualified independent acoustic engineer must be submitted and approved by the responsible authority. This report must detail the measures to mitigate noise as follows. Measures to mitigate noise from the IRCF1 and IRCF2 plant room areas, including all screening specifications, and measures to mitigate noise from vehicles assessing the Type 3 accommodation upper level garages. In the development staging plan, before the development permitted by this permit commits, a development staging plan is, if necessary, must be prepared to accommodate the internal occupancy of the development, including details of the level of completion of the stages included but not limited to the building form, the layout, the parking, landscaping, drainage, street numbering and replacement of street trees. And the waste vehicles must be parked in the basement when collected from IRCF1 and IRCF2. That is all about making sure that this building is staged in a way that minimises disruption to the street and parking on the street. We're also removing condition 34, the permit expiry to number 37. And recommendation B, that Council Transport Engineering carry out a review of traffic conditions, parking and parking restrictions in and around the surrounding area in accordance with Council's street parking management framework 6 months after the final occupancy of the site. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor De Morelos. As mover, Councillor Melican, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, this has been incredibly difficult, and the last speaker, you could feel the stress and the tension and the pain he is suffering. But as a council, we need to make a decision, and we need to make that balanced on what the concerns of the residents are, but the need for this sort of facility in our area. And if council was to refuse this application, as we heard, it would be likely to go to VCAT and we would lose all these conditions. We would go back to the black box that people were so upset about. And as we also heard, any sale of land would be a completely different process, and if council doesn't agree to that sale of land, this permit doesn't exist. So I'd like to thank the residents for their input. I can assure you that the input and the suggestions and the concerns raised have led to these alternate conditions. And I know people won't think they go far enough, but council needs to make a decision on this planning application. We need to make that based on the planning requirements. We need to base it on the state planning scheme. We need to base it on what's best for the future residents of Macleod. And I think these amendments we've put in softens the appearance of the building. We'll give it a shape and form similar to the previous development. It will improve access, reduce the noise from services, reduce the noise from the plant room. It'll make improvements to traffic and parking. And I think we'll get to the stage where this building will be accepted by the residents and will become a part of the Macleod community very much similar to the Southern Cross view that was there previously. And I know people will disagree with that, but this is a facility that this community needs. This is an organisation that we've heard that they will run it for the community on a non-profit basis, and we need to accept that on good faith. So I'm sorry for the people that will be upset by this decision, but we need to balance the need right across our community, and I think this is a sensible decision.
Excuse me, point of order. There's not an opportunity to engage in conversation. Could we please, there's not an opportunity to ask any questions at this point in time. No, sorry, there's no participation from the audience at this point of the proceedings. As a seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, I will take the opportunity to speak before we do vote on the decision. There's obviously a lot of angst come from the community. We've heard it here. Councillor Melican has definitely been in the back letting us know what's going on. I went out to the site myself to have a look. The one thing that I like to say is that it's clear that this sort of a facility is needed in the area. Now, is this the ideal way for it to go? Again, it's a matter of opinion. But my attitude is I would rather have the control. Now, as Councillor Melican said, if we reject this today, it will go to VCAT and the developer can strip certain things. Now, if we approve it, then definitely as a community you can take it to VCAT, but it's a lot harder for the developer to then go and say, let's take out and strip some of the good conditions that council has inside our planning policy. For that, I will support this recommendation, Councillor Melican. I know that you put a lot of work into it and these sort of decisions are quite decisive inside the community, but I do support this and I feel that this is a facility that the community does need. And I can only hope that going forward, the community can work together, and I'm sure at some point there will be local community members inside that facility. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any other councillors that wish to speak to the item? Councillor Neely?
Just briefly, it's a tough decision, and I know Councillor Melican has agonised over all the amendments and put in a lot of work. So I thank the councillor for his work on that.
Any other councillors? No? Well, look, I'd just like to acknowledge the significant emails that have come in from the community, both this time and last time when it came to council. They have come in large numbers, and this is perhaps the one that's received the most objections for some time at council, or objections. I'll also acknowledge that this isn't the first time this has come to council, and council provided advice and guidance to the developer or the aged care not-for-profit that they should consider reducing its impact on the local area. They took that advice, and this is the proposal that they came back with. Now, I've been on telephone more than 10 times with Councillor Melican on this. He's agonised over this tremendously. He's also raised up many of the complexities of this, and I am sympathetic to the community, but we also need to consider this within the parameters that we as councillors need to do, and that is within the parameters of the planning scheme, and that is this way we will be assessing it this evening on what we are the authority to assess it through. Now, it is also difficult for me to see good buildings knocked down. Now, this proposal is encouraging buildings that I think, when I went out there today, is sad to see knocked down. And there's good trees out there as well. But what I also acknowledge is when I was out there, there was a dominant, large 2- and 3-storey building of buildings that dominated many of the house blocks in the area with little vegetation. This area isn't all entirely a large vegetated area, and so that is another thing that I think is important to acknowledge. This site does have a significant amount of vegetation, more than the majority of the surrounding So it will have a very significant impact. But some of the recommendations put forward this evening go some way to maximising the amount of vegetation. And in one of the consultation sessions that I attended, grant myself a moment, I'll summarise, some of the consultation period was to consider whether we shouldn't potentially sell some of the road to increase the garden space. And that was put to us that we shouldn't if that proposal comes to us. Now, I'm concerned when residents say that this is going to reduce environmental outcomes, but at the same time reject opportunities for us to consider increasing the environmental outcomes as well. So I feel that there was some contradictions in engagement, but I acknowledge that this is important to a lot of people, and sometimes you're just looking for a reason to object to it. I have gone over my 2 minutes, but this is an important scheme. I apologise, but I also acknowledge that we had 12 speakers tonight, so it was very important we hear from everyone. So with that, I will now put it to councillors, the motion before us. All those in favour? Against? I declare the motion carried. I'll just check with governance that that is carried. Yes. All right. I'll just let the audience that is here for that item, if they'd like to leave, you have the opportunity, and we'll hold the meeting for a minute. Just a point of order, could you please cease? We've asked the question of officers on that subject already. Commencing in a small moment for those that are online. We'll recommence proceedings now. We just had a large audience group depart. We now move on to item 3.1, Australian Local Government Association National Conference, June 2023. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move, but I have an amendment, and if it could appear. So, yeah, I'd like to move as is, items 1, 2, 3 and 4, but an additional point 5, request that a report be presented back to a future council meeting regarding the consideration that need to be given to future interstate travel for councillors and staff, considering council's corporate emissions reduction plan and targets. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor de Morelos. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, well done to those who attended. I think the delegation was led by yourself, Mayor. No. Okay. So the Deputy Mayor then led the delegation along with Councillor Malakat, and we hope that Councillor de Morelos as well was in attendance. And thank you for the report, Councillor Malakat, on behalf of the group. And I understand that there was some fruitful outcomes arising from that delegation, including meeting with ministers. And we look forward to some tangible outcomes for the City of Banyule arising from those meetings. Just in regards to the point 5 that I've included, I believe it was our last council meeting, or it might have been the one prior, but we received a recommendation on tenders for our trucks, and the council was really eager, and I think it was a good thing to ensure that every decision that we make aligns with our corporate emissions reduction plan, and I think that when as a council, when we're looking to go on conferences, we've got to be conscious of what that means for compliance with the plan that this council adopted around looking to be carbon neutral by 2028. And when I did some analysis on this, the transport sector accounts for 10% of emissions, and the airline industry accounts for 1/3 of those. So when people are hopping onto planes and gallivanting around the country and going on conferences, it's very important to recognise the issues that is creating in terms of emissions. It's one thing for people to be able to do that in their own private lives, to be able to say that, look, I'll have solar panels on my house and I'll have an electric car, but I'll jet set around and gallivant on the world on the airlines. But when you're a member of this council and you're committed to achieving your corporate emissions plans, it's very important that you're not hypocritical. And it's very important, particularly when you're using ratepayer dollars. So very happy to move this motion, and very much looking forward to the report back on how we can do things better as a council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Being that we went to the National General Assembly, I know that Councillor Grotti definitely brought up some interesting things around Council's corporate emission reduction plan. But not to take away from the actual Australian Local Governance Association National Conference, to be the exact terminology. For me, I actually found it really successful as a councillor to go. It's such a great opportunity to see what all councils have problems with, or what is working with some councils. As a councillor, definitely getting other people's solutions to challenges that we may be facing, and then hearing about those and then being able to bring that back to a council group and have that discussion, even have that thought pattern that once you didn't have, is very valuable. I know that I wasn't there for the whole conference this year, but getting to meet some ministers, I'm sure Councillor Melican will talk about it, but I think even meeting the Prime Minister at one stage, which is something different. But it's definitely important to notice that the conference has grown. So I believe it was over 1,000 delegates this year. So it's definitely got some sway with the local, well, not local, but state and federal levels at this point in time, because there's enough councillors getting together that the voice is starting to be heard. So it's important from that point of view. But definitely taking on with the amendment that Councillor Grotti has, these things need to be considered alongside with all our policies. So, thank you.
Any other councillors?
I'll just make a few comments here. Thanks very much. Yeah, very good suggestion. I'd love the opportunity to drive, but I haven't got a car, so it's not possible. But I think very good suggestion. And in future, maybe we could borrow the mayor's new Tesla, and we could all drive up together. That would be a fantastic outcome. And as Councillor De Moroso was, it was the largest ALGA conference ever. There was over 1,000, and it was a fantastic event. And the things you learned about was the disaster management, because many councils have gone through some natural disasters and that. But climate change was the massive issue up there, and what we learned about the electrification of the whole grid, the whole housing and the whole transport was fantastic and very inspirational, the talk. But also the engagement with the people who were representing the voice and the Uluru Statement from the Heart, that was certainly a highlight. And housing, we talked about housing here, but housing is a problem right across the whole country. And it was interesting to hear from Western Australia, Queensland, like housing's a huge issue, and it's quite confronting when some of the people talk. But as you can say, there was some tangible outcomes. One of our big requests when we did meet with ministers was talking about how do we electrify the Ivanhoe Pool, which is an incredibly expensive exercise. And then the next day, the minister announced $100 million for improvement to sporting facilities to make them more efficient. And we're very hopeful that we'll be able to get some of that money and put it into the Ivanhoe Pool. So that was a great outcome. Meeting with ministers was, that was very, particularly the infrastructure minister, she was quite impressive. Talked about a lot of the things we're advocating for as well. So it was a great event. I'd encourage other councillors to go, but also this council put up a motion, which was accepted by the ALGA, about food security, basically. And, you know, looking forward to the ALGA now pushing the food security right across the whole, at a federal level. So a great event. I would encourage councillors to come, and hopefully next time we won't need to go by plane.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No, I'll take the opportunity then. Look, ALGA is a very important event. It's an opportunity for state government councils to advocate to our federal government. And in this situation, we took one proposal that around electrification of council assets to the ministers, and that was actually heard, and I think we've been advocating for this for some time with our local member as well. And the federal member put down $100 million over 2 years to deliver on electrification. And we met with the minister with a very considered strategic advocacy piece. And we were able to secure a meeting with the Deputy Minister for Climate Change within a few weeks afterwards. And 2 weeks ago, we met with Jenny McAllister to speak about electrification of pools at our pools, and we had a photo opportunity. So I'm anticipating that we might be in the running for a significant grant, and ALGA was one of the mechanisms we've been using to advocate for our community. And so I think this, if we do get one of those grants, it's absolutely a great investment to participate and the efforts that went into this. Unfortunately, don't have a mayoral car this year. There is no mayoral car, Tom, so there was none to give to you guys to take up. And speaking to the amendment, I would also note that I've attended a couple of times, and on each occasion, as in with the rest of my life, I did not catch an aeroplane up. I drove my electric car. So I take electrification and climate change very seriously, and I think it's a good commitment for us to look at how we can all do that level of commitment going forward for further ALGA meetings. But not to take away from the good work that our councillors did up there and the advocacy up there, I think I'd just like to acknowledge the importance of this. And with that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 3.2, revised procurement policy for adoption and annual procurement reporting. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Garotti, seconded by Councillor Neely. Oh, do we have an amended procurement? As mover, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we'll move as per papers with a new point 1 to adopt the revised procurement policy 2021 to 2025. 2 as is. 3, recommend to the Northern Council Alliance at the next review of the 4-year procurement policy to include under section 2 of the policy a statement that council commits to get the best value for money in all its procurement activities using a best and final offer process, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 as is. And point number 10, to provide a copy of the revised procurement policy 2021-25 to the Audit and Risk Committee for noting. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. Is the seconder comfortable with those amendments? Thank you. As mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Happy to be recommending this policy to be adopted by the council. Council's in a shared procurement scenario with a couple of other councils in the Northern Council Alliance, and as part of that there's a consistent policy across the councils which enables them or supports them to be able to engage in collaborative procurement. And it's for this reason that I'm advised that council can't explicitly include the BAFO process in the policy, but we have been assured that it is now standard practice from this council to seek a best and final offer. And for those in the gallery who would have read the 2 procurement related items that have come up this evening, the BAFO process was followed. And council saved $36,000. So that's something that I pushed for, and it's simple to do, straightforward. Some officers were hesitant. But that's $36,000 that we've saved just through one decision of this council, and those savings will grow over time. So what it demonstrates is that in the role that we have in approving policies and in guiding the governance of this council, we can achieve tangible outcomes. But very pleased to be recommending this policy to be adopted by the council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the item? Any other councillor? No? All right. Well, I then will put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 3.3, record of councillor meetings. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Is there a mover? Councillor Melican, seconder. Councillor De Morelos, as mover, would you like to speak to the item? Seconder? Any other councillor? No? I will now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 3.4, Audit and Risk Committee. Unconfirmed minutes, meeting held on 23rd of June 2023. Now there is one speaker to this item. Mr. Kevan Hill from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group will address the council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. You have 2 minutes to speak to the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. As a former young person, I was very impressed with the presentation earlier tonight. I don't want to go through this minutes of the committee line by line, just simply to say there are a couple of issues that I'd like to highlight. I think generally this report continues to get better and better and better. So the councillors involved in this are doing, in my opinion, a very, very good professional job. I've just got a couple of questions though. One is in relation to child welfare, and there's quite an emphasis on that in the minutes. About 2 years ago, Bragg asked a question about the attitude of this council to ensuring that councillors have working with children permits, and I was told that that wasn't necessary. It would appear from the recommendations of the Audit Committee principals that it was necessary, and I noticed that there's a recommendation that some sort of arrangement be made with all staff in terms of working with children. So I just simply highlight that, but Bragg did flag that 2 years ago. The other matter is to do with insurance, and I wouldn't get too carried away about the benefit of having insurance. Obviously, the council has to demonstrate due diligence in ensuring that it's taken every reasonable and feasible step to ensure that risk is mitigated. Otherwise, insurance doesn't respond, and I'm sure you all know that. The last couple of issues that I wanted to raise was in relation to the Local Government Association matter. I just simply note that 3 councillors went there. One went for 2 days, one went for 3, one went for 4. I noticed that the airfares are somewhere between $670 and $770. I can't understand why that would be. I could get an airfare return to Canberra today for $200. So I wonder whether these sorts of reports go before the Audit Committee. If they don't, I recommend they do. I notice also that one councillor attended for 2 nights, another one was for 3, one was for 4. I sort of don't understand why there's a variance, but maybe the Risk and Audit Committee can come back and report on that. And finally, I just wanted to say that some of this work, the forward-looking work that the Risk and Audit Committee is doing and recommending to the CEO and the senior management team is really first class. And I think over the next year or two, when you get on top of all the things that have to be brought up to speed, we're going to have a very, very good functional council. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have a question for just the council-appointed delegate who was in attendance at the meeting. Were there any matters arising from that meeting that need to be brought to the attention of this council and to our community through you, Mayor?
Nothing outstanding or major that needs to be mentioned here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Or do we have a mover of the motion? Before us, Councillor De Morelos. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Neely. As mover, would you like to speak to the item?
I will take this opportunity to discuss some of the things that happened in the meeting. As one of the delegates that attended, one of the only council delegates that attended during that day. So prior to the meeting, sorry, I'm just gathering my thoughts and my notes. The absence of council management at the June meeting, the auditors advised there were no matters of concerns, and council has been forthcoming in all information requested during reviews. The committee congratulated council on the quality and level of reporting in the 368-page document and acknowledged the amount of work which was undertaken, resulting in 20 reports aligned to the annual work plan with a focus on audit, integrity, finance and safety reporting. During the meeting, there were discussions on many key matters, including the following. In accordance with the internal audit plan, an internal audit review.
Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor De Morelos, seconded by, I'll second this. As mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So Greg Rimmer-Holloman has been an independent representative of the Audit and Risk since September 2020. His experience, he's an experienced non-executive director, treasurer, chairman, Audit and Risk Committee member with over 20 years of board level experience, with particular expertise in the public sector, banking and consultancy industries. And he's also currently interim chief internal auditor at Melbourne Water. And he has also had appointments before interim chief audit and risk officer at the Victorian Department of Health, chief internal auditor at the National Disability Insurance Agency, chief internal auditor at the ATO, Australian Tax Office, and head of audit for Public Transport Victoria. He's achieved an honours Bachelor of Accounting Science. He's a certified practicing accountant, chartered public finance accountant, chartered internal auditor, and a graduate of the AICD Company Directors course. His recommendation to reappoint for a further term have come from Dr. Irene Irvin, the chairperson, myself as one of the delegates, and Director Corporate Services, Mark Julia. One of the aspects that I can say that I've very much enjoyed about Greg is his lateral thinking to most problems. As things come up in a discussion, he definitely laterally can jump to different sectors and different categories within the
over the years. I'll now bring us back to this agenda item. I will now put this motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 3.6, awarding of contract number 1293-2023, provision of air conditioning and mechanical services maintenance. There are no speakers on this item this evening. Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Grotti moved, seconded by Councillor Malikan. Would you like to speak to the item? No? Seconder? Any other councillor? No? All right. Well, this is a significant contract and valued at around $500,000 a year. So this is quite significant, and that's why it's coming to council this evening. I'll now put the motion before us. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 3.7, award of contracts 1295A 2023, reconstruction of Ringle Park Oval, and 1295B 2023, reconstruction of Ford Park North Oval North Oval ground. There are no speakers to these items. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Moved Councillor Malikan, seconded by Councillor De Morelos. As mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, Ringle Park Oval, an oval I know quite well and played football on several times. Certainly well-used oval, and in a wet year it can become incredibly boggy and sticky. So good to see that's finally getting an upgrade, and also the North Oval at Ford Park. If you went down to Ford Park when the official opening was done, it was quite obvious that the North Oval had been neglected, and I know the North East Link did have plans to do it in the near future, but decided to bring that forward, which is fantastic, and they're paying for that. And it's also very good to see that both these came in slightly under the budgeted amount, which is unusual in these days, given that some contracts we go out or some construction we go out for coming back in at double the price. So very good to see this is coming in. And council did try and link these two items together, so we're trying to get some economies of scale, but it turned out that that didn't eventuate, mainly because some of the contractors didn't have the capacity to do both grounds at the same time. So happy to support this tonight. I'm looking forward to Ringle Park Oval becoming a premier oval, like some of the Beverley Road Oval has done recently, but also good to see that Ford Park North will also be upgraded to the same condition as the South Oval, which was very in magnificent condition. So we'll go with the new pavilion there as well. So happy to support this tonight.
Thank you. Would the second like to speak to the item?
Yep, just excited to see this come through, seeing that the Ford Park being brought forward by NELP, and that's being secured through the NELP funding, which is great. But also I just want to bring, which is probably hats off to Garotti, Councillor Garotti, is the best and final offer saved us another $10,000 on this one. So, you know, that's a great policy that's been brought forward, and I just want to raise it. So outside that, Councillor Malikan has said pretty much everything that's needed.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Mitsonikos.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, after tonight, there may be many happy footballers out there for both Ford Park and Warringal Park. My kids have played on Warringal Park, and it's a mud pit at the moment. And it's also a challenge getting to the coaches' boxes. I'm one of the first aiders for one of my kids' teams. And yeah, it can be really hard getting through the mud when you've got an injured player to get them to sit down. So it'd be really great to have this oval looking awesome and not a mud pit. Banyule Football Club has recently had theirs, and it looks fantastic. So I'm sure that everybody will be really happy when both Ford Park and Warringal Park look the same. And also great to hear the savings from what was allocated in the budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No, I'll just take the opportunity. I'm very glad to see Warringal Park come forward. It has been delayed for a couple of years. It first came to us a little while back now, but I'm very happy to also see the hard work that officers put into coming back to us with under budget allocated to delivering these projects. As Councillor Melican said, it's a rare occurrence these days, but we did an extensive process and did everything we can to reduce the cost of these significant pieces of infrastructure. Both councillors' contribution, Councillor Garotti and also officers, everyone's playing their part in delivering these important projects and trying to find savings where possible. And I will acknowledge that the significant bog down at Warringal Park, collapsed drainage system, I'm told, is the cause of that. There will be thousands of people that use these ovals every year that will benefit from these. And I was shocked when I came to council just how many people are members of these clubs. So I thank everyone for their work to get it to this stage. We have some big jobs ahead of us over the summer period to deliver these projects. And I look forward to that work if this gets over the line tonight. With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 4.1, Banyule Youth. No, done that. Moving on to item 4.2, Advisory and Population Committees Report, April to June 2023. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Neely, moved. Seconded. Councillor Melican, is there an amendment to this? Yes, I believe there is somewhere, a bit lower. A minor amendment?
Yeah, the amendment of number 5. Note the LGBTQIA+ Population Committee and the rest as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is the seconder comfortable with that amendment? Great. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
I'll just briefly, Mayor, just that this is a good report showcasing and regularly reporting on the community consultation that Council's doing in areas important to Council. So reading the report and looking across all of the different areas and committees, we, as councillors, we can't get to all of the committees, but we can certainly read this report and ask questions about what's going on. So thank you, great report.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll just make a few comments here. As a councillor, it's difficult to cross all these issues, and it's great that we have these committees where we can meet with experts in their fields and passionate about issues and concerns about council practices and schedules and how we do things. So it's great that in this report we're seeing what all the different experts feel and what they think we should be doing differently and what we can improve on. So a great report to receive. I'm very happy to receive it.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No, I'd just like to acknowledge as a representative for the LGBTIQA+ and the Disability Committee, both of them have put recommendations forward, and then we encourage our members to participate in every way possible and put recommendations to Council that consider those through reports, and they come back to Council in the future. So just acknowledging the work of those two committees. I now then move this motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 4.1, Population Advisory Committee Annual Achievement Report 2023. 4.3. Yep, sorry, 4.3. There are no speakers on this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer recommendation before you set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a mover. Councillor Neely, seconded by Councillor Melican. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a thank you to all of our committee delegates who work towards achieving a better Banyule. The opportunities across these committees have progressed, and it's great to see some more equity and inclusion outcomes in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Second.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that as well. But it's interesting, after the youth summit, their concerns and some of the concerns of these groups are very similar, and it's amazing that they're all talking about inclusion and how at the youth summit they're much more accepting of other people than we possibly were at that age, and it's very good to see. And but also I'd like to thank the staff. I know there's a few in the room tonight that help run these committees, and without their support and efforts we would not be able to run these committees. So I'd like to thank the staff as well as the volunteers that do put in their time and achieve great outcomes for council.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No, I'd just like to acknowledge the significant contribution from all of our community in holding us to account. I would also like to acknowledge the significant time and effort put in by council officers to make sure that these committees are productive and fruitful, and also providing back this report back to us to help us understand what has been achieved. So thank you to all those involved. I will now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 4.4, extension of advisory and population committee terms. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before us, moved by Councillor Neely, jumping the gun a bit, seconded by Councillor Melican. Councillor, would you like to speak? You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. As the report states, this committee term commenced 6 months into this council term, and since its beginning there's been a lot of change in the community due to the lockdowns. We had meetings online, moving towards hybrid meetings, and then moving towards some in-person meetings, and then on a rotational basis. So it's been quite difficult to engage properly due to a bit of lack of consistency. And now that time has passed, this proposal allows committees to continue the good work that they're doing and progress, and a little bit more continuity would work really well, which is why I'm supporting this, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak?
Just a quick comment, a logical and sensible extension of time to coincide with the upcoming council elections next year, so I'll support this tonight.
Any other councillor? Councillor Garotti?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, happy to support as well, and recognising this will now take the extension up to the end of this council term. And I suppose coming toward the end of this term, you know, we may look to call upon the CEO to provide a report so that a future council can be armed with some information around you know, whether to take forward the committees, and if so, in what shape and form. They do come at a cost, a material resourcing cost for the council. And the question that I certainly have in my mind is that cost worth it in terms of the value provided? Yes, there's certainly value. But in my experience, the really big decisions and great ideas that have generated from this council, and for example, the social inclusion, social enterprise and inclusive employment program that we pioneered, those sorts of really innovative things. It's not talk fests through a committee. It's the community, it's councillors, it's getting together and making things happen, not getting around talking. So very happy to support all of the reports that have come up tonight, but I do think it will be important for a future council to be able to critically review these things and to have the advice from the CEO to do that. And I'll certainly be asking that advice is provided well in advance so that a new council can hit the ground running and not be delayed 6, 12, 18 months around the future of these committees. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Just before I speak, I'd just like a question for the Director for Community Wellbeing. We are extending tonight we're being recommended to extend the duration of the existing members. My concern is, are other members in the community having the opportunity to participate in these, and are we going to make sure that those committees are filled if other members don't wish to continue?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, we will. So first of all, we'll approach the current sitting members. We already have some vacancies and we suspect some members might not continue. So in line with the terms of reference, we will run an expression of interest process to invite other community members to put their hand up as well.
Thank you. With that, I'm comfortable to support this recommendation before us tonight. The last thing I want to do is stop the community from being able to participate. I want to continue to allow new blood or new participants to be part of these important committees, but also acknowledge that it's important that we have some continuity as an ongoing process and support of the extension of the existing members going forward. With that, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 4.5, honorariums, options for Banyule population committees. There's one speaker on this item, Mr. Kevan Hill from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Kevan, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
I need that. Bragg would like to talk about. First of all, we're opposed to paying anybody who supposedly was and should be and continue to be a volunteer. Probably leads on to the next question, which might be a little silly, but are we going to have volunteer awards in the future? Because there won't be any. The second thing is these committees obviously come together with self-interest, and I just don't know because I'm not involved to that extent. But are there contrarian voices on those committees, or are they in a group think? And do they move in a sort of vicious circle to have the outcomes that they want? And I heard the expression that we might open it up. Well, should we open it up or should we just have a spill? You know, it's like my argument about how long councillors should remain councillors. Maybe 2 sitting terms, then get out and give some fresh ideas of opportunity to come forward. So I'm not trying to, upset a councillor, but I'm just sort of putting that concept. So in terms of these honorariums, you might say, well, it's not a lot of money. Well, it's not. But why pay them any money? Why not take the option that, well, look, you can go and have $100 worth of exercises at the gym? Why pass money that's not ours to give? It's ratepayers' money. And I'm sure that a lot of ratepayers would wonder why the council, which is struggling with its finances right now, if you read the audit report and all of the financial reports, says, well, look, we're going to engage a little largesse and throw some money around to volunteers. And if that's going to be the case, then maybe people who come along to these council meetings regularly should be paid an honorarium as well. So I just want to leave that hanging there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. Calling for a motion. Councillor Garotti, seconded by Councillor Melican. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to speak to this item and in favour, and certainly do really appreciate the comments of our speaker. This is my 3rd term, by the way, so message received and noted. But earlier, I suppose I spoke a little bit critically about the committees, but I don't for one moment want anyone in this room or the community to think that that applies to the members who volunteer their time. And I had the privilege of being on the Disability Advisory Committee with people with disabilities that are on it and parents of those with disabilities. And they are amongst the most committed, hardworking, dedicated people I know. And so when I sort of pass a bit of criticism around committee structures, that's because I sort of question if that's the best way of getting the outcome for the community. But in terms of the time and the commitment and the value and ideas from these people, it is beyond question. And I don't think it's too much for this council, on behalf of the community, and we're elected by the community, to say to people that are giving up their time, their valuable time and their input, to say we appreciate that. It's not a payment, it's a very token honorarium. There's some different options there, a sitting fee, a voucher, a pass to the leisure facility, a donation to your local charity, or no honorarium at all. It's just about us as a council saying to these people, and the honorarium will only go to those that are non-agency representatives. So for example, on the Disability Committee, there are people from Belgravia Leisure and Autism Australia. They won't get the honorarium because they're in a paid capacity. But when I noticed that there were parents there with members who had significant disabilities, and I saw the time and commitment they were giving up to contribute, I don't think it's too much to be able to say to people like that, we value and respect you, and we're just going to recognise that with a token honorarium. So I'm very proud to move this because it signifies our deep respect to all of those who volunteer their time to contribute to our committees. But I do also take the point from the Speaker about people who attend these galleries regularly. I think it might be a stretch to try and arrange an honorarium, but I certainly do really appreciate as well our regular attendees and the vital role that you play in our city in holding us to account. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the second like to speak?
Yeah, fully agree. And I remember during the COVID crisis, there was a woman there that spoke on the Disability Committee, and she talked about the 3 autistic children she had, and because of COVID, she wasn't able to get respite care, and she'd been stuck at home for an incredibly lengthy period of time, short of money, and she still attended the meetings. And you could tell from her voice the pressure she was under, the hardship she was enduring because of the lockdowns, and yet she committed time to attend this meeting and talk about her issues, and it was quite moving to hear that. And as I said before, you can't be across every issue and every concern or every group within a council area. So it's great that we have these people. And whether there is an option not to take anything, but I think it's just a gesture to say we appreciate your giving up your time, your expertise, your knowledge to share with us. And I think this is just acknowledging that we do appreciate it. If they choose not to take it, that's fine. If they choose to give it away, that's fine. But if they think, no, well, my time is valuable, and I consider this little reward something the council is saying to me, thank you for your efforts, thank you for your participation, and thank you for taking the time to try and make us a better council. So I support this tonight.
Any other councillors? Councillor Neely?
Thank you, Mayor. I know it's a little bit repetitive, but I'd like to acknowledge that this shows flexibility and support for our community members. They do give up a lot of time. It's a show of appreciation for the work done over a year. And being part of several committees, I'm impressed by the feedback and the knowledge from the community members. There is definitely a lot of debate and a lot of, thorough discussion, different points of view that is shared, and then that contributes to our various plans across council. It allows council to have a set of fresh eyes or expert eyes to improve things in our local area. So the cost is a good investment for more informed community plans of council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Now the councillors. Now I've just got a very quick question for the Director of City Wellbeing. There was a question around the cost. Could you please, for the audience, provide the cost, the anticipated cost of these honorariums.
Thank you. If all the volunteer committee members took up an honorarium option, it'd be around $8,000 per annum.
And how many members are there approximately across all the committees?
I'm not sure offhand, sorry.
About 79.
You have to divide it by 100 into 8,000, so...
Okay.
Yeah, 79. My maths is, yeah, 79 and a half.
Okay. I don't know what to say that. Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for the speaker tonight. It's always important to have the hard questions asked to council and challenge everything that's before us. So thank you for that. I also accept and respect the feedback provided by the committees. I've attended pretty much all of them, just about, and there was diverse views about how we can acknowledge and thank our community members. And that's why we ended up landing on this, which was very different to what we thought might happen up front. So I think it just shows the level of respect we have for our committees, and I am fully supportive of this. I will now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We are now moving on to item 4.6, 7 Wellington Street, Montmorency, Community Hub, Expressions of Interest Process. There are 3 speakers to this item this evening. First up, we have Michelle Jarvis, who will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Michelle, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and as a shareholder of the community established and funded Monty Community Hub, formerly located at 1 to 3 Mountain View Road, Montmorency, and it's very dear to my heart. The purchase of 7 Wellington Road is highly contentious to the members of the Monty Hub and myself, who feel badly let down by the actions of council and its failure to consult with an existing community group that have poured their heart, soul, money, time and effort into making the Monty Community Hub work. Council have bought a substantially smaller and inferior property. They've paid 25% more per square metre for a site that is 60% smaller and not fit for purpose. It now requires a budget of $10,000 to maintain the property lawns and garden, and that seems an excessive amount because the timeline isn't indicated. And further, $30,000 is required to prepare plans and to bring this property up to scratch and for suitable for use as a hub. And then there is the actual cost of the works to bring it up to scratch. So to make this property fit for purpose will be many tens and hundreds and thousands of dollars more, in place of the existing Monty Hub, which had a community workforce ready, willing and able to make the existing Monty Hub happen. Timing of this purchase is galling, disappointed and hurtful to the Monty Hub members who were not consulted, despite having many ongoing meetings with council. Timelines which matter are that I might email you because I've run over time, but I think you've got the gist.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Marcus Wiggin, who I believe is not present this evening. Do we have... firstly, we've got a question. Councillor Neely?
More a point of order. Just reading this request to speak, I would say it's a relevant debate about Eaglemont, not Montmorency.
Just check with governance. Is this in alignment with recommendation or what's before us tonight?
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Neely, can you just confirm, are you referring to the written statement that's before you and you want clarification as to whether it's relevant?
I would like some clarification on whether it's relevant debate on Montmorency.
Just to confirm, the written statement is not for debate, it's somebody's submission. So I suppose the Mayor will need
Sorry, so Point of order is on relevance to the item.
So a councillor can call a point of order if through the submission a councillor makes a determination that the submission is not relevant to the matter that's before council. The councillor Castaldo will need to make that decision as he sees fit, should somebody rule in that manner.
Yeah, look, it's a line ball call, but look, in the interest of discussion about community facilities, I will enable this one to move forward. Do we have a director to speak, to read this item out? If Councillor, Director for Corporate Services, please, could you read it out?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no neighbourhood house, no toilet, no men's shed, no public owned or rented location, in fact no facilities at all for general access managed or owned by council in Eaglemont. An area with many older people with limited distance of walking capacity, this is unconscionable. The large hole in facilities is well illustrated by the community bus map just issued. Before a richly endowed area such as Montmorency is provided with an extra facility, a basic one is essential in Eaglemont, not only for the community nexus so badly needed is such an area, but also to provide for the first time publicly accessible toilet at ground level and a meeting place for the normal range of purposes of a neighbourhood house. It would also materially revivify a visibly failed centre for which the term inactivity centre is all that can be honestly be applied. This decay must be stemmed. This is, to my personal experience, nearly 40 years overdue in the heavily rated and under-invested Eaglemont area of Banyule.
Point of order again. So this was about Wellington Street, Montmorency, but we've listened to a submission about Eaglemont. So just
Acknowledged.
Noting that.
I've just got a question for the Director for Wellbeing. On this item, there was some concerns around whether this is an appropriate allocation. We just accepted a community infrastructure plan. Was the location in Montmorency recommended, and was the location in Eaglemont recommended for such infrastructure?
For the first part of the question, the infrastructure plan identified there was a gap in that general precinct. Montmorency wasn't like picked out as a suburb, but in that area, identified a gap for a strategic purchase to support a community or neighbourhood house style. In Eaglemont, the community infrastructure plan also supports a gap in service, more for a community meeting space or a multiple use meeting space, and less so for a neighbourhood house community facility. But definitely a community style meeting space in Eaglemont is on our list to look for.
Okay, thank you. We now move on to a third written statement that will be read out on behalf of Liesl Green from Montmorency by Darren Bennett, Director of City Development, and is speaking against the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. While I support the decision of Council to establish a community hub in Montmorency, I would like to point out the work of the Montmorency Community Hub, a community organisation formed to establish the same purpose in late 2019, early 2020. Given the timeline outlined below, I'd like Council to explain why it made the decision in April to purchase 7 Wellington Street rather than support the Monty Hub with its purchase of the site at 1 to 3 Mountain View Road. It would seem that the community of Montmorency and the volunteers connected with the purchase of Monty Community Hub were being abandoned by Council at the same time Council made a decision to provide the community with a much needed community hub neighbourhood house. I'm asking how Council sees this as a fair and transparent process to the Montmorency community. How does Council anticipate a not-for-profit group will operate a neighbourhood community house without funding, given the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing are not providing funding rounds at this time and there is no recurrent funding available? Council had the opportunity to work with the Monty Hub in a partnership. Why did Council choose to purchase Wellington Street and not support the Hub? The Hub required refinancing a $1.5 million loan. How much money will council spend on the total purchase cost and the uplift of 7 Wellington Street, and why wasn't this money considered for uplift of the Monty Hub? Why was council decision to purchase 7 Wellington Street never put to the community of Montmorency or the broader community of Banyule? The decision by council to not consult with Montmorency community has left a bitter taste in the mouths of the many volunteers that have tended to the bush garden at 1 to 3 Wellington Street and that have fought desperately at times to conserve the Alistair Knox building on site.
Thank you. Now, do we have any questions for officers? I've been asked by Councillor Champion that couldn't make it this evening to ask 3 questions, and I will put them to the Director for City Development. Firstly, what is the fundamental difference between the acquisition of 1-3 Mountain View Road and the acquisition of 7 Wellington Street?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the key decision at the time that 7 Wellington Street was purchased was that it was available for outright purchase by council. And at that time, there was an opportunity for a co-investment model with the 1 to 3 Mountain View Road, a matter about which council determined to co-invest with the state and federal government. So that was the key difference.
Thank you. And second question is, what are the constraints to council if it were to purchase 1 to 3 Mountain View Road?
So part of our considerations about the appropriateness of Mountain View Road for a facility that council might invest in looked at the fact that it was a significantly larger site with some but limited capacity for car parking on site. It had extensive tree canopy coverage, which would need to be retained, several older buildings that would require significant renovation to bring them up to a standard to meet for a council facility. Certainly the community was carrying out improvements on the site, but our requirements for the standard facilities would be significantly higher in terms of improvements, and it was felt that that cost was too great in combination with the larger parcel of land.
Thank you. And finally, the question is around how is 7 Wellington Street considered more appropriate than 1 to 3 Mountain View Road?
I guess 7 Wellington Street's always been identified by us as a potential acquisition site. It's directly behind the shopping centre. It's directly adjacent to our car park. It has that proximity and access then to the parking that we own and manage. It's also closer to the shops. In terms of the future use, the expression of interest process will look at whether or not use for a community facility is a good outcome in the shorter term. Council also has other options. Should we decide not to proceed with that, the property has been rented as a dwelling in recent times, and a range of other opportunities, but primarily its location next to our existing land holdings and its proximity to the shops and open space was a really key opportunity.
Thank you. We now move on to the motion that is before us on the papers. I am calling for a mover. Councillor Neely.
I just had a question
yes.
before that. Just with some relevant points from the last written statement to, I think, community wellbeing. All the comments about non-for-profit group, how will that work with the neighbourhood house and how will the recurrent funding happen? I think that can be easily answered by the Director.
Please.
Thank you. So with a not-for-profit group, depending who the not-for-profit group is, if we look at a similar model that we have now with our current neighbourhood houses and community centres, they have a lease at a minimal contribution to council, and then generally the income they generate through the not-for-profit rental of the facilities, so the rooms for hire, so the Pilates classes or the cooking class or whatever, that income helps to fund that service, whereas in the original business model that the Montmorency Hub had put in front of us, that income was also paying back a loan. In this situation, there's no loan to pay back. One of the actions in the report too, Councillor, is that we acknowledge that there is no neighbourhood house coordination funding available from state government, not just for this facility but others. Part of our role is to advocate for improved neighbourhood house coordination funding for all of our neighbourhood houses in Banyule.
Another question from Councillor Grotti.
Yeah, just a follow-up question and related in a sense to what Councillor Neely was asking. But yeah, just in response to the third written statement around council, this group not having the funding available from Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, did the Monty Hub provide any indication to council as to how they were going to be able to operate the hub, pay for loan interest without and operate the facility and programs without that state government funding?
They did originally. They had hoped with their business model that they'd be able to generate enough income for the activities on the site to achieve that, whilst also lobbying for funding. And they were very successful in getting some grant funding, but none of that was ongoing operational funding. But they were hoping the business model would help bring in income.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? So do we have a mover? Councillor Neely, seconded by Councillor Grotti. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think that this is a really good opportunity for the Montmorency community. The community infrastructure plan that was adopted this year identified a need for this, and I understand the Monty Hub and all the work done by the entire network of Montmorency residents and community people in different groups. They fought hard. I understand the big difference is that this site is a council building and also originally identified as a strategic property. So it's obvious as to why that this was identified as a strategic property in the first place. It's in a great location in proximity to the open space off Weir Street near the new beautiful mural that's on display there. So for me, the possibilities of hosting some really good community programs is the priority. I'd like to see the Monty community look at the needs and see what this space should be for the future and how it can engage with the Monty community in the best way to be accessible. So looking forward to progress on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor with the second, I'd like to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Probably just three comments I wanted to raise. One was just in regard to Councillor Alison Champion, who couldn't be here this evening, but hopefully has an opportunity to hear these comments. Just a terrific advocate for Montmorency, a very strong, fearless, passionate advocate for that community. And I think I just want it noted on the record that due to her own interests, had no involvement whatsoever in council decision-making or processes regarding the acquisition of that property. But really was a really big advocate in bringing Monty Community Hub onto this agenda, pushing this council to liaise with state and federal governments, pushing us to put money on the table, which, you know, given the state of state and federal budgets, could not be matched. So I just really wanted to acknowledge her work and her advocacy. Two, just really wanted to acknowledge the work of our officers, Director Kath Brackett, Director Natasha Swan and our Chief Executive for the very rigorous process of identifying this property in alignment with the community facilities review that was undertaken. And also just like to acknowledge the very good governance and probity that's going to be established to run an EOI process now to identify the best possible operator to take carriage of delivery of community services in that area. The third comment I'd make is that one of the speakers alluded to a question around how a not-for-profit group can operate a neighbourhood house. without Department of Families, Fairness and Housing? My answer, go to Bundoora. Bundoora Community Connect, do it without state government funding. It can be done. Where there is a will, there is a way. Bundoora is leading the way. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Always talking about Bundoora. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? Councillor Melican.
Yeah, I'll make a few comments here. This has been quite a difficult process, and I can understand the deep feeling that people committed to the Monty Hub feel that, and it was a difficult decision. We had to, and I remember the discussion when people talked about the Monty Hub, how they, and comparing it to the Petrie Park Hall and the requirements for a community house. And then we looked at this property at Wellington Street, and it matched the requirements for a community house. I remember they talked about the requirement to have an area where they could have a community garden, and this provides that. But then, in an ideal world, council would have purchased the property at Mountain View, but we just didn't have the funds. And then you look at the estimated cost to bring that facility up to a standard where we could function as a council-run community house, and it was prohibitive. Whereas this site, as it's stated, is closer to the shopping centre, it's closer to other council facilities, a much reduced cost, and a much reduced cost to bring it to a point where it could function as a community house. So council was faced with a very difficult decision. I can understand why some people might be disappointed with that. But then we look at other community houses and how much, and the service they provide, and Councillor Garotti mentioned Bundoora, and I look at Rosanna Fire Station and the funding we provide for that community house and the benefits and the programs and the facilities it provides. So if we're going to increase the fund, if we were to purchase that property, then put it in the millions of dollars to bring it up to speed, our other community houses would then be expecting us to fund them to a similar level. And we simply don't have those funds available. And I know it's disappointing that the neighbourhood houses aren't being funded as they once were by their state government, which is a bit of a sign of the times. But in an ideal world, we would have purchased the Mountain View property, but we simply didn't have the funds to do it. This property became available. It fits the purpose of what was identified in the allocation, in the requirements for Montmorency Community House. So council had to make a difficult decision, and I think we made the right decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No? I'll firstly just read out the statement that Councillor Champion asked me to read out on behalf of her, that this expression of interest is in line with councillor vision, noting that a community space is required in Montmorency and immediate surrounds. We're looking forward to hearing from any organisations who can support that vision. Now, I'll also note that the trigger for this was both the community's participation and push for the Monty Hub, but also a very important piece of work the council undertook, which was community infrastructure plan, to look at where the shortages across Banyule are. And we have to act on an informed way and make sure our community's money is spent appropriately and effectively. Now, I would say in a perfect world, this is a great location for this community hub, right next to the shops, right next to the park, right next to a car park, excellent access to all those things to have mutual benefits. So I think this is an excellent outcome. Council can't go out to the community telling everyone we're looking for properties right next to the shops. And if we were to do that, we'd be telling all the owners that we were going to pay top dollar. We can't talk about everything we do. We have to act strategically behind the scenes, continually looking for opportunities. And I think there was another opportunity that some of our community members are talking about in Eaglemont, about opportunities down there. We are continuing to look down there as well and across Banyule, and when something that does fit within our strategic program of delivery, we will be making all the steps to bring that forward and deliver on those shortfalls of infrastructure. So I'd just like to also thank Councillor Champion for her work, and Councillor Neely, who has been playing a role in looking for community infrastructure in the north of Banyule. With that, I will now put the motion on as per the papers. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to the, item 6.1, Draft Heritage Strategy 2023 to 2033. There are 3 speakers to this item. First up, we've got Pippa Griffith from Ivanhoe East, who will address Council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Pippa, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
I'm speaking against this motion as I hope you will defer the community consultation period because it coincides with several other significant consultations. A few weeks ago, I wrote to the CEO about how much consultation was happening. At that time, I was aware of 7 issues. With this draft heritage strategy, it is now 11 issues. And these are the ones I know about. There may be others still to come. Over a 3 to 4 month period, this is a massive workload for community members who are making a voluntary contribution to Banyule. It must also have an impact on new councillors too. Those people who could provide the most valuable feedback to the heritage strategy are also those who will be providing the most constructive feedback to other important issues, such as the housing discussion paper and the biodiversity plan, which are open for consultation now. Recently, we've had the governance rules review, the urban food strategy, and not long before that, the urban forest strategy, all of which required a significant commitment. And with a number of consultations running concurrently and busy other lives, we're becoming overwhelmed and unable to give issues the attention they deserve. We are invested in doing a good job. Getting across the issues, then writing constructive and in some cases very detailed submissions can be very time-consuming. The survey is often inadequate and does not cover all the things we have to say. I really value the opportunity to provide feedback, and I know others do too. I'm not asking for less consultation, just that it be spread out a bit more so we're not dealing with so many things at the same time and can provide better quality feedback. Council can help us by taking some of the pressure off and deferring this consultation. This would also mean it can be properly advertised. There's nothing in the August banner about the heritage strategy. Consultation is planned for 21 August to 22 September, so the information sessions may have happened before some people receive their next banner. Not everyone in Banyule is comfortable using Shaping Banyule or social media. Relying on these things alone is not very inclusive. I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Robin Roberts from Banyule Planning Network, who will address Council in person as speaking against the recommendation also. Robin, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
I'm someone who usually contributes a lot to the heritage strategies and studies. I do a lot of research that I put into them. I spend months sometimes putting in submissions and doing that research. This is going to be on display for only 4 weeks. It starts in August, and as was pointed out, it hasn't already been advertised in the banner. Recently, we've also been participating in the Housing and Neighbourhood Character Strategy, and we've had some walks, and we've had, or about to have, a meeting. I went to the Greensboro one, but there'll be another one in Ivanhoe tomorrow night. We haven't had a lot of people turn up for those, and I think part of the reason is the lack of longer-term advertising that it's happening. It takes a while to get the community engaged in an issue. You need to give them repeat messages that something's about to happen. You don't just advertise in the banner the same month that something's happening, or even 1 month before it happens. You advertise in 2 issues so that there's more chance that more people will pick it up, more people will tell their neighbour or their friend and get more people on board. Recently, I sent out an email to my network about the Housing and Neighbourhood Strategy walks and the workshop that's about to take place. A week ago or so, I got no response to my email, and then I repeated it over the weekend and I started to get responses. So I'm also advocating that it's delayed, because you can delay it or extend it and make the advertising better before you have any public meetings that you want people to attend. So if it goes out in August, make it extend to the end of October and advertise it in 2 issues. I'd also like you to extend the housing and neighbourhood character consultation so that you get more involvement in that. And people have been a little bit disappointed in 2 of the walks in Ivanhoe and Heidelberg because people felt that it didn't cover the suburban neighbourhood character. So we did cover that at the walks at McLeod and Montmorency, which was good, but the other 2 concentrated on the shopping centre, which for me was fine. I think that character is important as well. But there's a need for more discussions face-to-face with the staff on those issues. So I'd like you to consider that, please. Thank you.
Next up, we have Jane Crone from Egremont, who will address council in person and speaking for the recommendation. Jane, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Well, I actually put down 4 in case I missed out, because you can miss out if there's too many for and too many against, because it's not always at the Mayor's discretion that we are allowed to. So I applaud council for embarking on its draft heritage strategy, and this is going to be between 2023 and 2033. But I do request, this is what I'm against, that the community consultation plan for only the 21st of August to the 22nd of September, that includes only, I gather, 1 online 12th of September and 1 in-person 14th of September consultation, as well as an online survey shaping Banyule, be postponed to a later date, as there are presently far too many issues that Council's expecting its residents to respond to. I've been involved in a lot, and these have included governance, which I wrote a submission to, re-council meetings, urban forestry strategy, which I wrote a big submission to but took a year to be acknowledged with a thank you letter and no date on it. Housing strategy and neighbourhood character, which I'm involved in at the moment, going on these walks and these conferences, which haven't been very well attended because I think they weren't well advertised. The dates weren't actually in the banner, even though it said it was happening. And biodiversity is coming up together, coming up soon, together with tonight's heritage strategy that also includes local character, significant trees and Aboriginal cultural heritage. We need 2 months of banner advertising with actual dates, as well as a later closing date for submissions if we're to have any chance of providing a worthwhile and well-researched response to all of these. As this review only occurs every 10 years, it is far too important to not have a good result that will have authority and provide good protection. The review may be limited, however, and this is Council's wording, they say, due to financial implications. You refer to agenda page 85, which states, subject to available funding each year, engagement of an expert heritage consultant, as well as there being reliance on available staff resources. So it still sounds a little bit dodgy as to whether it can be paid for. The attachments is huge. There's about 30 pages, and it was mentioned that there's extra added in the latest banner, more protection for Banyule heritage, but you've only added 20, not enough for the heritage overlay, which has got 210. Not enough of our buildings are registered or classified and protected. We need to do a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for officers? I have a quick question for the relevant officer. There's been some concerns around the level of strategies out for public consultation. Could I ask the most relevant officer to provide some feedback whether this is an extraordinary occasion where we've got a massive amount, or is it in line with standard workloads of council?
Through you, Mayor, we generally have these numbers of policies and strategies out. We have a pretty stagnated workflow. We try to ensure that we consult with the community in varied ways, but we'll take on the feedback that we've received tonight. When Pippa did write in, we are looking at whether we can have a more programmed calendar on our Shaping Banyule of forward thinking of the consultation that we would do in advance, so that the community can understand the different points and the different dates that they need to engage. So we're working with our provider of how we can actually develop that for our website. But I think, it's the community want to have a voice, and we're trying to ensure that we're engaging with the community as much as we can on all the policies and strategies that are available at the moment.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Garotti?
Yeah, Mayor, I did have a question, possibly of our third speaker, if that was agreeable to Ms. Crone, just in terms of understanding from a community perspective what an appropriate length of time would be required to get the advertising right and to get the consultation period right. Are we looking at 2 months, 3 months, 4 months? I just appreciate that input.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? No? With that? Oh. Yeah, I think we heard it. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm just foreshadowing I'd like to move a deferral of this item.
Okay. There's an amendment before us, I believe, as the from the papers. This has been put forward by Councillor McKern. We're looking for a mover, Councillor Neely.
I'm happy to move on behalf of Councillor McKern to endorse the draft Banyule Heritage Strategy for community consultation and extend the consultation period until the 6th of October 2023 to allow for more time for the community to participate, which has just worked well.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Melican. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, a whole council approach to heritage is very important, and this will allow us to improve our understanding of Banyule's heritage. So looking forward to the community feedback with this extension of time. Thank you, Mayor.
Seconder, I'd like to speak to the item.
Can I just ask the appropriate officer the financial implications of delaying the permission period, please?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. There wouldn't be any financial implications to extending the consultation period. It would just delay the adoption of the strategy at the other end of the process. So taking more time in consultation just means it won't come back to council as quickly for consideration, but there wouldn't be any additional cost.
Thank you all. Well, I'm happy to support the extension of the time period given the response from our community and given that we are running a few other processes at the time. But would this also give it time to appear in the next banner?
I'm not exactly clear on the details, but the September banner would certainly be out well before the 6th of October. So, yes, that would.
Well, I'm happy to support the extension of time period given those two. That's no additional cost and would give us the opportunity to put it in the next banner. Thank you.
All right, one further question on if there might be the possibility that we have some further words to suggest that it should be in one additional banner prior to the closure of the public consultation. Is that possible?
Through you, Mayor, we'll need to take that on notice. The banner's actually produced a fair way in advance, and in response to Councillor Melican's question, even though there's no resource demand, delaying this would then maybe create the same problem that the audience has raised about our future programs of work. As we extend, then we would need to think of our future programs that we're looking at consultation. We might run into the same issues that have been raised tonight.
Thank you. So with this amendment, how many weeks additional time are we allowing for our community to participate? Could I have that information?
Yeah, through you, Matt. So we do have information scheduled to be in the September banner, but it's likely that if that's produced, it would have the shorter time frame, which was the 22nd of September. But we could certainly update that information on the website for those people that find it in the banner, to assure them that that extended time period to the 6th of October. I, like my colleague, Director of Community Wellbeing's math's not fantastic, so I couldn't tell you how many
2
extra
weeks.
days
Okay.
from the 22nd of September to the 6th.
All right.
Mayor, could I, or just a suggestion, is that at the moment I'll be reluctant to be able to support this because I'm concerned it's not giving adequate time for advertising and community consultation. That's why I thought a deferral might be appropriate, so we could get the appropriate advice back from officers on advertising period, promotion in the banner, newsletters, I find is very well received by the community. But perhaps if there's an appetite to really just lock this away tonight, could I suggest that that be extended out to perhaps the 22nd of October? Just to really lock in a couple of extra weeks there to make sure that, the second banner goes out and people have time to contribute.
Would the mover be amenable, accept that further amendment to the 22nd of October?
So moved.
Would the seconder be happy with that? Yes. Okay. All right, would the mover like to speak to the item?
I thought I had, but no further comments, Mayor.
The seconder?
You know, as we know, heritage is incredibly important and we need to get it right. And some people say that, and some of the speakers talked out that they don't think we're going hard enough and far enough with our heritage listings, and I'm taking that on board. And if people have properties that they would like to see added to the process, well, we're quite happy to receive that. So I'm happy to extend this out further and make sure we do get it right, because, as I said, it's a 10-year, once every 10 years we do the heritage. I know we add properties from time to time in that 10 years period, but it's important to get this right, and happy to extend the consultation process and get as much community input as we can.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Grotti?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wanting to acknowledge that Pippa, Robin and Jane, they're all here. So it's 10 p.m. and I think that's just, they've chosen to rock up here and talk to the item. Haven't submitted a written statement, gets read out by directors. And I think it just highlights their commitment and the commitment of many in the community getting this right. And I think when they say that, look, can you extend it out an extra couple of weeks so that they and others have time to consider this properly, as well as the other strategies on the go, I think it's just respectful that we hear that. So I'm happy to be supporting this amended motion tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? No? I'd also like to acknowledge the three of you for being here this evening, and Pippa's phone call today, and also email, to make sure that we have the maximum time to consider your thoughts. I recommend everyone in the community, when participating with council, it's always helpful to get an email to us prior to the meeting so we can consider it as much as possible as well. I know a number of people do that. But I think we've got some good information from the CEO there that we do have the opportunity to maybe provide forward-looking opportunities for the members of our community to see what's ahead. And I think that's really good for a level of transparency. And I thank Councillor Grotti for pushing this one forward. And also Councillor McKernan wasn't here tonight. She pushed for it to be extended, and so that we could increase the community consultation as well. And I'm supportive of what's before us. With that, I will now put the motion as before us. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item, we've already done 6.2. We will now move on to item 6.3, 31 Aberdeen Road, McLeod. Demolition of public toilet at McLeod Park. There is one speaker to this item.
Mayor, I'd like to raise a procedural matter in a similar context to that raised by Councillor Neely earlier. I don't believe that the statement's relevant to the item at hand, and I'd like to raise that point of order, Mayor.
Okay, I'm just considering it. Just give me a moment. I agree with you, Councillor Garotti, that this is not to, that this is irrelevant debate to this particular item coming before us this evening on a public toilet in McLeod. I'll speak to some of the subject matter that was raised by Mr. Wiggin in my contribution coming up. We'll now then move on to there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion. We have a mover, Councillor Melican, a seconder, Councillor Garotti. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you'd have to say this is a very hot issue in the Ibbott ward. The toilets here that we're proposing to demolish have been in a fairly bad condition for a long period of time. I know this council spent some money about 4 years ago to try and improve them, but that's failed miserably. The popularity of the park has certainly increased right through the COVID years. It's probably one of our most visited parks, and yet the toilets are in a terrible condition on the wrong side of the road. Quite often get asked, why aren't we replacing them, and better still, why don't we move it so they're next to where the play equipment is and where the people want to use them. So this is the first step in that process, and I know the Speaker talked about the more you're pulling down a set of toilets when we haven't done in Eaglemont. Well, I can assure you the money is in the budget. We've done the plans, we've done the consultation, and as soon as possible we will be building the new toilets across the road, quite close to the play equipment, and they will be much more serviceable, much more family friendly, and a real bonus to that park. So happy to support this first step in the process of bringing a decent set of clean toilets to McLeod Park in close proximity to the play equipment.
Thank you. Councillor, with the second, I'd like to speak to the item.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think, as important as councillors that we and as a council don't get parochial about where things happen in local areas. The reality is now that that park in McLeod has become an overwhelming success. And if you're down there on weekends, as I am, you'll find that you're interacting with people at Rosanna, Ivanhoe, Eaglemont come from there, St Helena, Bundoora. It really has become almost a regional play area, connected very well in with the shops. But as Councillor Melican would be aware, as the local ward councillor, those toilets there are well past their due date, and also very poorly located on the other side of the road, which makes it very difficult for parents and families that are trying to manage kids and taking kids to the toilets, etc. So very happy to be supporting this because it helps to move forward what I think are very valuable works for the whole city of Banyule. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge that this is a highly used toilet. I often see queuing at this toilet. There's not many public toilets where I see that. And children running across the road from the playground to the toilet. It is a dangerous environment for parents. So I'm supportive of this upgrade as well. But I also acknowledge that there's a shortage of toilets elsewhere in Banyule. And Eaglemont is one of those places where the toilet isn't available. But I will say that there are toilets there. They're just locked up from the community, which is an outrage in my view. And I think we really do need to do some advocacy work on that. And maybe it's time I put a notice of motion or something up to address that at the next meeting or as soon as possible. Because when we have government assets that are being prevented from our community's usage in an area of need, it's outrageous. So I do acknowledge the concerns of Councillor Mr. Marcus Wigan, who we didn't speak to, didn't allow to have his document read out this evening, but there is a wider conversation that needs to be had, and I'm supportive of the sentiment in that. But coming back to this is an important one for council, and it was already budgeted in the current year's budget, so I'm supportive of this next step into delivering that asset. I now then move. Right, a reply, Councillor Melican.
I failed to comment. I should have noted that these toilets won't be demolished until the new toilets are completed. I think it's need to assure people that it's in the report, but I just want to assure people we won't be knocking these ones over until the other ones are built.
Thank you, Councillor. I now put the motion before us. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 7.1, Asset Management Policy Review. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Garotti, seconded by Councillor Melican. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to speak to it, in part because you asked one of us to, given its importance. There's that old saying that council's about roads, rates and rubbish. I think you could say it's roads, rates, rubbish and assets. What people forget is the massive asset base that local government is responsible for maintaining. All of the footpaths, all of the drainage, all of the curb and channel, all of the playgrounds, all of our community facilities, all of our nature reserves and parks, street trees, nature strips, they're all assets that council is responsible for maintaining, and it's a significant undertaking done on behalf of the community. In my role in another sector, I actually encouraged a colleague to have a look at what's done in local government, and they were quite blown away about the level of sophistication that this sector brings toward asset management. And I would say within the city of Banyule, we go one level better than the sector. So it's a credit to Director Darren Bennett and his team. I think it's a real area of strength. Asset management, the policies that we have in place, the processes, the very systematic structure that we have for all of those assets that I've just outlined. Very happy to recommend the adoption of this policy, and in doing so just thank the work of our officers and led by Darren Bennett and your team. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the second like to speak? Any other councillors? No, I think it's all been said. Thank you, Councillor Garotti. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 8.1, Proposed Declaration of East Ivanhoe Village Special Charge Scheme. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Melican, I'll second it. Would the mover like to speak to the item? Any other councillor wish to speak? No, as ward councillor, I'd just like to acknowledge the importance of special rate charge schemes to encourage and enable an active and thriving activity centre. And this East Ivanhoe Village is one special little shopping strip, and I'm very supportive of this moving forward. It provides $85,000 to the local community down there to make sure that it's a functioning, thriving centre, with $37,000 per annum provided from council's budget. I will now put the motion as per the papers. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 8.2, Proposed Declaration of Ivanhoe Special Rate and Charge Scheme. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion. Councillor Melican moved, seconded by Councillor Demirellis. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
I will speak to this one. Ivanhoe is certainly one of our larger shopping centres, and given the changes this council made to the special charges and the structure of the committees, I think it's been a huge success. Council does put a lot of money into these special charges, and after the last few years we come to the realisation that there needed to be a review of the way those committees were being managed, how they were being run, and the input that council has into those processes. And I think through the good work of officers, those committees have been restructured. Council involvement is now a lot greater than it was previously. Our oversight of these committees is now a lot greater. And I think the committees are actually appreciating that the council is taking a more hands-on approach, because this is our ratepayers' money going into these special charges. And I think the smoothness that those changes have been implemented, the fact that the Traders Association are now getting on with the jobs, and it's brought a lot of new blood into those Traders Association as well. So I think that's an excellent thing. So I'm still happy to support this tonight, and really like to thank the officers, because it was a quite courageous thing that they suggested this council did. And we rocked the boat a bit, and I think we've come up with a very good result.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the second like to speak? Any other councillor? No, I'll just note that this is for a $240,000 annual budget to run the centre, with a $100,000 contribution from council. I'll now put the motion as per the papers. All those in favour? Councillor? Yep. Against? None. I declare the motion carried. I note that we're now moving on to notice of motion, and there are no listed notice of motion on the papers this evening. We then moved on to general business. We have two councillors to speak on this item. Firstly, we've got Councillor Neely around the joint committee meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a member of Banyul's RAP committee, chaired by Councillor Di Morelos, and I'm part of the yarns that we have regularly. This joint committee meeting invited all committees to listen and ask questions about a shared conversation by the Reconciliation Advisory Committee at Barbunnum Beak. So that happened on the 19th of July. And it was an opportunity to ask questions, learn about the voice from a First Nations viewpoint. Banyul residents asked questions around how the media is covering the voice, whether it is treaty, truth or voice, what is the thinking around it, why do a couple of Aboriginal organisations not support the voice. So there was robust discussion around it, and the main message from the Yarning Circle was to encourage respectful and curious conversations and questions. They want the community to be informed when it goes to a vote, which I believe is around October at some point. They acknowledge that there are differences of opinions on what should come first, particularly in regards to treaty, but are looking for ways forward to support the community. So it was a very enlightening and learning experience for me as a resident and a councillor. And I encourage anyone that wants more information to join these yarning circles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And while Councillor McKern couldn't make it today, she was unwell, she has been contributing to the council meeting and has asked for an item to be read out on behalf of her. And I'll read that out now. That there was a successful National Tree Planting Day organised and hosted by Friends of Eaglemont Village. Friends of Eaglemont Village hosted two events: Planting Day with Ivanhoe Grammar School Grades 4s, 26 students, 2 staff and 6 volunteers who planted 120 plants on the day. And a planting day with the community included local residents and Councillor McKern, and incorporated volunteers via Planet Arc. All up 50 participants for that event, a significant event, and 180 plants planted on the day. Council contributed cage, trailer and green waste, which was fully filled with extracted weeds. And a special thank you goes out to John Walkley and the team of Friends of Eaglemont Village for organising the event, a tremendous effort in galvanising community efforts towards greening the area of the Hurstbridge Rail Corridor. Thank you to all that participated. Do we have any other councillors? Oh, we've got 2 pictures up on the screen. Were they? Excellent, very good. Any other councillors? No, we now move on to public question time. We have received 8 public questions, and I now request Council Directors, Corporate Services, Mr. Mark Gilio to read out the questions, and Directors and Officers to read out Council's response. The public questions will be included in the minutes of the meeting. The minutes will be available on our website later this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The first question is from Sheldon Williams from Rosanna, and the question reads, as part of Council's commitment of zero carbon by 2028, does Council factor in the external carbon contributions of councillors attending conferences, international, interstate and intrastate without using carbon credits? And if not, why not? I refer the question to Director of City Development for a response.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Council has established a target to achieve carbon neutrality by 2028 without the purchase of carbon offsets through our corporate emissions reduction plan. This target has been set for emissions which arise because of activities under our direct council control, which are referred to as Scope 1 and 2 emissions. To clarify, Council's commitment is to carbon neutrality, which is also known as net zero, but is not the same as zero carbon. We have committed that our emissions and our emission reductions will balance to zero. For Scope 3 emissions, which are emissions where we do not have direct control over the activity, we will consider the actions that the service provision company is taking and purchase offsets where required. With respect to travel such as flights required as a normal part of business, such as attending the National General Assembly held each year in Canberra, we do not control the activity as we do not operate the airline. For domestic airlines in Australia, we note that they have set their own targets for net zero emissions.
Next question is from Roger Fife of Ivanhoe. My question relates to fresh applications for Banyule residential parking permit policy in a residential parking precinct adjoining theirs, complying with the conditions set out in the 2023 Banyule residential parking permit policy. Question is, how many applications have been received from residents of Precinct 60, broken down by number approved, number rejected, and number of existing RPPs held for each applicant's residential address? And I refer the question to Director of City Development for a response.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Through the renewal process, 33 permits were issued. There has been 1 fresh application for a residential parking permit in parking area 60, which was approved. We're unable to provide the address of any application or renewal for privacy reasons, but can advise that the fresh application was from a property within parking area 60.
Next question is from Pippa Griffith, and the question reads, given that through the 2020 lockdowns, Council allowed for remote attendance, i.e. live, not pre-recorded, at Council meetings to both councillors and community speakers, are there any foreseen difficulties that prevent live remote attendance now being offered to the community in the request to speak process? I refer the question for response to the Governance Coordinator.
Thank you. Just to clarify for the gallery and for Pippa, just to note that this question was previously asked and answered at the 17th of July Council meeting, and clarification was required, and we made that commitment to you that would bring it back and respond to you accordingly with additional information that we have. So we prepared the response for you today, and we have consent from you to release your name as well. So it was previously advised at Council meeting on the 17th of July that throughout the COVID-19 lockdowns, Council allowed video recordings of the community members' request to speak submissions, but at no time did community members dial in and engage with Council live in the meeting virtually. We just want to clarify and add to that original response at the request of the submitter, that there was one instance in which 2 live submissions were allowed to a council meeting after April 2020 resolution, and it was on an item in the 7th of September 2020 council meeting. As this item was in relation to a traffic matter where the submission process was governed under the Local Government Act 1989, specifically under section 223, a requirement to present/speak in person was required to be made available, and the dial-in option was the only option available at the time due to the COVID-19 restrictions. Officers confirmed that from a technical perspective, there are several risks regarding reliability of technology in being able to deliver dial-in options, and therefore Council resolved at its meeting on the 6th of April 2020 that speakers could submit pre-recorded videos, audio messages or a statement to be read out at a meeting moving forward. We confirmed that there were no other instances of live submissions to council meeting in 2020. There were, however, pre-recorded audio messages submitted and all other requests to speak via this method or written statements read out on behalf of the community members by a member of the executive team or council staff. As we have since returned to in-person meetings, there is no longer a requirement to offer that dial-in method, as community members can now either attend in person, submit a pre-recorded video or audio message, or submit a written statement to be read out on their behalf.
Next question is also from Pippa Griffith, and the question reads, given there was factual error in Council's response to my question in the public questions section of the last meeting, the 17th of July 2023, which I've been assured will be acknowledged at this meeting and recorded in the minutes, and Council is committed to open and democratic process, shouldn't the governance rules, the draft of which has suggested a number of additional rules for the public to adhere to, also include an obligation for Council to, at the earliest opportunity, publicly acknowledge and correct any errors in their response to a public question and to record this in the minutes? I refer the question to Governance Coordinator for a response.
Thank you. As previously advised to the submitter, Ms Pippa Griffith, directly in an email received from them on the 18th of July on the matter, to ensure that an accurate reflection of the response provided at the council meeting on the 17th of July, the minutes from the 17th of July will remain unchanged. However, an update would be provided at this meeting, being the 7th of August council meeting. The meeting minutes as presented on the 17th of July council meeting are an accurate reflection of the response provided to verbally and presented back to the submitter, albeit there is further clarification that has been provided as just read out tonight. Regarding the governance rules question, the governance rules stage 2 covers community participation in council meetings only and not the requirements or provisions for the process of amending previous meeting minutes. Just to remind that the stage 1 of the governance rules consultation feedback sought on that particular meeting procedure last year. The earliest opportunity to correct and clarify the response publicly for questions submitted at the previous meeting is the next available council meeting, being this evening. The clarification of the response has therefore been publicly acknowledged and will be included in these meeting minutes for the 7th of August 2023 council meeting.
Next question is from Michelle Jarvis of Heidelberg, and the question reads, what consideration did Council give to the purchase of land at the well-located 1-3 Mountain View Parade, Montmorency, a prominent corner land holding of 1,942 square metres, only 350 metres from Montmorency's Weir Street and close to Montmorency Station? Refer the question to Director of Community Wellbeing for a response.
Thank you. As this site did not meet the criteria for the strategic property purchase, Council did work with the state and federal government to seek a partnership opportunity to purchase the property at 1-3 Mountain View Road, Montmorency. This did not come to fruition, and the estimated cost to bring the building up to a practical standard was not considered viable. However, at the council meeting held on the 20th of March 2023, a full report detailing Council's consideration and resolution regarding this matter was also considered, and a copy of this report can be viewed on Council's website.
Next question is from Alicia Curry of Rosanna, and the question reads, recently Banyul's Council acknowledged that a substantial portion of my Shaping Banyul survey submission was inadvertently missed and subsequently left off the feedback report, being the urban forest strategy, which has now been amended. However, Council does not always provide a community consultation feedback report and relies on a summary view once an officer recommendation has already been made in a council meeting agenda item, such as being suggested for the governance rules. So would council amend their protocols so that early consultation feedback reports are standard practice to assist in both public transparency and consideration of all feedback prior to the officer's recommendation? I refer that question to the Governance Coordinator for response.
Thank you. Community engagement and feedback reports are typically supplied as an attachment to council reports scheduled for consideration at council meetings. There is no standard approach to how consultation feedback to different projects is presented back to council or the community, and that's due to the varying nature, the scope, timing, budget, resources and sensitivities of each project. Council endeavours to close the loop with the community following each community engagement process, and that's typically on Shaping Banyule and by advising Shaping Banyule members and project followers of project findings. Council officers analyse community feedback received through the engagement process, which aims to inform the recommendations made to council for consideration. With regard to the recent Governance Rules Stage 2 Community Participation Review, all workshop participants were supplied a copy of all feedback from both workshop 1 and 2 via email, if their email was provided, on the 18th of July. Officers are currently assessing the Governance Rules consultation feedback and then making a determination on the best approach on how this data will be presented to councillors and the public in a meaningful way, which will be included in the council report scheduled for the 25th of September 2023 and will be made available on the Shaping Banyule page.
Next question is from Rowan Harrison from Eaglemont Neighbourhood Conservation Association Incorporated. The question reads, why is council not enforcing the planning permit conditions at a Mount Eagle construction site, Outlook Drive, Eaglemont? And I refer the question to the Director of City Development for a response.
Thank you. It's understood that your question relates to the construction at 11 Outlook Drive, Eaglemont. The site has been recently inspected by Development Planning and there were no breaches of any conditions identified on the site.
Next question is from Jane Crone of Eaglemont, and the question reads, why is council selling yet another great community asset that is perfectly situated in a major activity centre with easy access, plenty of parking, storage, kitchen, newly polished dance floor, not carpet, close to public transport, and is on a single level without the need for not fit for purpose lift? It is obviously being used by many community groups, including the Warringal Orchid Society, of which I'm a member, who have recently been given only 6 months to vacate and find another venue, suggestions being Belfield or Warringal. Both of these have little storage space as well as many other issues, together with evening sporting practice having to share the Beverley Road car park with the Warringal Conservation Society, as well as the Banyule Theatre. Why are Banyule residents, especially those in the Griffith ward, being made to miss out again, as has the Ivanhoe Garden Club, that's been forced to move 4 times by council, whilst I've been a member, each time to the lesser facility that does not meet their needs because their hall was sold? I refer that question to the Director of Community Wellbeing for a response.
Thank you. At the time that the Belfield Hub was planned, council contemplated relocation of other users into this new facility, being Belfield Hub, with a subsequent sale of ageing buildings, many of which required considerable maintenance and were not able to meet the requirements of current groups using the buildings. One of the buildings from which users were to be moved into the Belfield Hub was from Horden Street Community Hall, Horden Hall. At the 29th of May 2023 Ordinary Council meeting, Council resolved to receive a further report to commence the statutory process for the sale of land at 78 to 80 Horden Street, Heidelberg, in accordance with Section 114 of the Local Government Act 2020. The giving of public notice of Council's intention to sell does not compel Council to sell the land. Council is merely complying with the statutory obligations under the Act. This process will entail giving public notice of its intention to sell and undertake a community consultation engagement process in accordance with Council's community engagement policy. Supporting the continued operation of community groups is a priority, and Council staff have been working one-to-one with each group to ensure their needs can continue to be met in a relocated facility. The Orchard Society meet once a month, and they are currently looking at Belfield's site. In fact, they had a site meeting this week to view it. They will also look at the old Shire Hall office. Council's booking officer is liaising with this group around their needs. Storage requirements will be accommodated for relocated groups, as Council understands this is critical to the group's successful operations. And increasing storage capacity at the old Shire office is currently being investigated to support groups that may need to relocate. And the Ivanhoe Garden Club are enjoying the new facilities at Belfield Community Hub, having been relocated from the old Belfield Community Centre site.
Okay, that's it. Only 8 questions this evening. We'll now move on to the closure of meeting. In accordance with section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will be now closed to members of the public for the consideration of 2 confidential matters. Item 11.1, Banyule Cemeteries Trust Future Management Options, and 11.2, 12 Salisbury Avenue, Ivanhoe Alternative Outcome for 3-storey apartments developments, P1125-2022. Items 11.1 has been designated as confidential pursuant to S31A of the Local Government Act 2020, and 11.2 has been designated as confidential pursuant to S31H of the Local Government Act 2020. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mitsonikos, seconded by Councillor Neely. Would the mover or seconder like to speak to the item? No. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. The next ordinary council meeting of council will be held on Monday. We're still in progress. Councillor Malikan. The next council ordinary meeting of council will be held on Monday, the 28th of August 2023. I now close the meeting to the public at 10:41 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance in person and online.